I think somebody might have their iPhone alarm going off. If you want to listen, check your iPhone. I do hear an alarm going off, so it might become more apparent when we all quiet down, but we're going to need that turned off, please. Thank you.
Commissioner Delbs.
Here.
Commissioner Karapetkov.
Here.
Commissioner Locke. Here. Chair LePage.
Here.
And Commissioner Allen is absent.
Okay, we're all here. So I don't even have my agenda open yet, but
Mr. Chair, if I could just interject, we were asking earlier if we just be quiet for a second, if someone has an alarm going off on their iPhone, if you could just listen and turn that off, please.
okay, thank you. So the first item on the agenda are the public appearances. So anyone from the public who wishes to address the Planning Commission this time can come forward. These are matters of municipal concern which are not on our agenda tonight, and they will not receive discussion tonight, but they may be agendized on a further meeting. So Michael, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair LePage, Michael McWalters, Scenic Road 2 north of 11th, and Director Swanson and Commissioners. I was reading the draft wireless ordinance, and I found a conflict within it. And on page 8 of the draft wireless ordinance, page 8 of 35, is the following statement about wireless facilities that they want to put in our village. Quote, "The facility will not result in human exposure to radio frequency radiation in excess of the applicable FCC safety standards set for the set for within this 47 CFR that's in the document." And then on page 2 of 12 and 3 of 12 of the wireless facility standard conditions of approval is the following statement: "The installation complies with all applicable FCC rules and regulations for human exposure to radio frequency emissions and will not cause members of the general public to be exposed to radio frequency radiation levels that exceed the maximum levels." So 2 years ago, on August the 24th, the U.S. Court of Appeals, D.C. Circuit, issued the following. They found that the scientific evidence that they've learned contradicts both of those statements. There was a lawsuit, Environmental Health Trust versus the FCC, And the court held that the Federal Communications Commission failed to respond to record evidence that exposure to RF radiation at levels below the FCC's current limits cause negative health effects unrelated to cancer. Further, the FCC demonstrated a complete failure to respond to comments concerning environmental harm caused by radiofrequency radiation, and the court found the FCC ignored numerous organizations, scientists, and medical doctors who called on them to update limits. And the court found the FCC failed to address the following: impacts of long-term wireless exposure, impacts to children, the testimony of people injured by wireless radiation, impacts to wildlife and the environment, and impacts to the developing brain and reproduction. So you guys are between a rock and a hard place. There's 30% of the village, about 966 people, who are electromagnetically sensitive to wireless antenna radiation, which means that if they have to live next to a facility, for use of another word, they get sick. And so we can't have an ordinance that has misleading information in it. So that's, so you have a couple of choices. The first choice is you don't pass or approve the ordinance on the 23rd, or you rewrite it and make it so that it doesn't let people get sick if they live next to a facility. I think the easiest solution is to keep the ordinance that we have, because there's no wireless antennas in the R1. We should keep that at the least. And I know that City Hall wants you to rubber stamp this draft wireless ordinance, but I think what you have to do is what you did in 2019 when you said no to the Verizon tower on Carmelo and 8th. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. And our special meeting for the wireless ordinance is coming up on August 23rd. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Okay, are there any other members from the public that would like to address the Planning Commission tonight on matters of municipal concern which are not on our agenda? No one else? Okay, we will move on. Any announcements from staff?
No, sir.
Okay, any announcements from the commissioners? Okay, anyone from the public, any announcements? All right, hearing none. All right, so next item is on the agenda is the consent agenda. The consent agenda is considered to be routine in nature. Matters are usually handled in one motion, but any member of the public or the commission may pull any request to pull any item on the consent agenda for further discussion. So we have four items on the consent agenda tonight. We have item number 1 is the monthly activity report from Planning and Building. Item 2 is adoption of the minutes from the Planning Commission's regular meeting, June 14th. Item number 3, adoption of the minutes from Planning Commission regular meeting, July 12th. And a design study, DS 23019, the D. Cossin project. This is a final design study, associated coastal development permit for the net addition of 180 square foot addition and to an existing 1,258 square foot two-story residence and a 208 square foot guest house and various other improvements. This is located at Carmel Street, 2 northeast of 8th Avenue. So are there any questions about any of those items? Okay, hearing none, I will make a motion that we accept items 1, 2, and 3 on the consent agenda.
I'll second that.
Okay, the motion's been made and consented. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Delbs?
Yes.
Commissioner Karapetkov?
Yes.
Commissioner Locke?
Yes.
Chair LePage?
Yes.
And
Motion is
Commissioner Allen is absent.
absent. All right, the motion is carried. Okay, now we are moving on to the public hearings tonight. We have 4 items on the public hearing. We're going to start with item number 5, as numbered on the agenda. This is design review 20-350 and a use permit 23-158. This is the Ulrica Plaza, and this is consideration of a design review and use permit and associated coastal development permit for the construction of a 22,443 square foot, 2-story mixed-use building with 12 apartments and approximately 9,000 square feet of commercial spaces with a 15,292 square foot basement containing 28 below-ground parking spaces located on the southwest corner of 5th and Dolores Street in the Service Commercial District. Can we have the staff report, please?
We're just waiting for it to. Sebastian, can you flip it over to the main screen for us, please? Thank you.
All right, thank you, Chair. Just before I begin, I just want to give a quick heads up. It is a bit of a long presentation, so please just sit back and relax, make yourself comfortable. It is about 30 minutes during my last run through, so feel free to just sit back.
It's well worth the price of admission, though. Don't worry. Yeah, I'll take care of it.
There, I'll just wait a second before I get started. Okay, so the project site is located at the southwest corner of Dolores Street and 5th Avenue in the Service Commercial Zoning District. The site has been partially developed from 2 previously approved projects that allow for the construction of 2 mixed-use buildings on a merged building site. Construction was halted in 2019 and ownership of the property was later transferred to the current property owner. 3 preliminary reviews of the project were previously held to allow the commission and the community to give preliminary feedback on the application and to address items of concern. The applicant has revised the project based on comments received at those workshops and is now requesting a formal decision on the project. Since we've all been looking at a construction site for so long, I thought it'd be helpful to remind everyone of the site condition prior to any demolition work and to help retell the story of how we got here today. At the corner of 5th and Dolores, there is actually an existing 2-story commercial development. Interestingly, in one of the photos I was able to locate included the story poles from the previously approved Del Dono project. And while this presentation is not intended to be a comparison of the 2 projects, it is helpful to understand the previous approval and the story of how we got here today. In the photo on the slide, the tallest story poles represent the tallest point of the building, which was previously approved, which is at the 30-foot height limit for the site. This visual may be helpful to keep in mind as we discuss the height later in the presentation. The previous images were from the 5th Avenue frontage, and here's the view from Dolores Street. And then again, just pointing out where the story poles align with the previous approved project. And then here are some aerial shots of the former site, just for some additional context. And one more from another angle. So the applicant is proposing to construct a 22,443 square foot mixed-use building with a 15,292 square foot underground parking garage with 28 parking spaces. The site is comprised of 4 separate buildings, each with their own distinct architectural style, sited around a central courtyard with the interblock walkway access from Dolores Street and 5th Avenue to Lincoln Street. 12 rental apartment units are proposed, 10 located on the 2nd floor with 2 located on the ground floor. 9,000 square feet of commercial space are proposed between 14 commercial units, though the approval has been structured to allow for up to 15 commercial units. Public way improvements are also proposed as part of the project with new landscaping in the right-of-way as well as throughout the project site. So in reviewing the proposed plans, the Commission should take into consideration that the proposed project does not need to strictly comply with every design guideline to be approved, but deviation should be minor and reasonably related to good design principles and site conditions. So the site is located in the core commercial land use designation and service commercial zoning district. The core commercial land use area shares the same boundary as the central commercial and service commercial zoning districts. Well, it's rather complicated to provide a detailed overview of the similarities and differences between the land use designation and zoning standards. The key takeaway here is that generally buildings in the central and service commercial districts share the same development standards, or basically they're able to look the same, but the types of uses that can occupy the business space will vary and generally are less intense in the service commercial district where the project site is located. So the site is 16,000 square feet. However, the maximum building site area in the service commercial district is 12,000 square feet. However, a larger parcel does not preclude or prohibit development. The development of a larger parcel requires that the land area be broken up into 2 or more distinctly different developments to avoid the appearance of a single large project and to maintain the small scale and village character of the city. To address this requirement, the applicant has broken up the project into 4 smaller architecturally unique buildings as illustrated on the slide to achieve this zoning standard. Building coverage is defined as the total ground area of a site occupied by any buildings or structure. Building coverage includes exterior structures such as stairs, arcades, bridges, and permanent structural elements projecting from the building. The site is allowed a base coverage of 12,800 square feet, or 80% of the site area. The applicant is not proposing to take advantage of any building coverage bonus and is proposing 12,271 square feet of coverage, or about 76.5% of the site area, which is 529 square feet less than what's allowed. Excluded from site coverage are building projections that extend over the property line and over the public right-of-way. The project does include a small number of these features, such as second-floor balconies. While the building code does allow for these projections, the zoning code does not address as to whether they are acceptable or not. Permitted projections generally include elements such as signs and awnings, which are encouraged, but are generally temporary, but structural projections are not addressed, so the commission should consider whether these structural projections should be allowed or if the projection should be brought back to the property line. The site is allowed a floor area ratio of 135% of the site area, or 21,600 square feet. A floor area bonus of 10% for providing a courtyard and interblock walkway is also available to the applicant to allow the total up to 23,200 square feet. The applicant is proposing a total project floor area of 22,443 square feet, or about 140%. That results in 757 square feet less than what's allowed. According to the municipal code, no single structure shall contain more than 10,000 square feet of floor area. The project consists of 4 individual buildings, each less than 10,000 square feet. Building 1 is just over 3,000 square feet. Building 2 is just shy of 5,000 square feet. Building 3 is just over 6,000 square feet, and Building 4 is just over 7,000 square feet. According to the zoning code, the maximum allowable building height shall be determined primarily by the design and context established by the prevailing heights of nearby structures facing the same street or intersection and within the same pedestrian field of view. In the central and service commercial zoning districts, the main building and roof forms of all structures shall be limited to a maximum of 30 feet. In general, the buildings are under 30 feet tall, with the massing being set back from the street, as the majority of the street-facing roofs are hipped and side-gabled that push the roof peaks back away from the street. The 30-foot tall elements are only the portions of the building where the mezzanines are located, and those elements are set back onto the site away from the street frontages as illustrated on the slide in the leftmost figure. The mezzanines here are outlined in red and the property lines are outlined in blue. At the March 9th, 2022 hearing, a commissioner inquired about the history of the inclusion of the mezzanine level, in which they stated essentially adds a second level to the second level, which some might interpret as a third level. A similar mezzanine level was approved as part of the Daldano project, with staff at the time requesting the commission to make a determination on the appropriateness of the inclusion of such features, as the zoning code is silent as to whether this is a story, whereas the building code does not consider this to be a story. A portion of the staff analysis from the Daldano hearing was included in the staff report, and the commission at the time did not take issue with the mezzanine and approved the project with the feature. The interpretation of mezzanines has not been counted as a story, has not been adopted as a formal policy, and it has only been permitted on a project-specific basis. In other words, the commission still has discretion over this matter. This item regarding mezzanines was deliberated at the October 2022 preliminary review hearing, and the commission gave mixed feedback regarding the inclusion of mezzanines. Support came as it is acknowledged that they can help provide housing, and opposition was stated that they may appear as a third story. The mezzanines currently proposed are substantially similar to the mezzanines reviewed at that hearing, and the city's building official has reviewed the proposed plans and has confirmed that the mezzanines meet the building code requirements to be considered a mezzanine. The applicant is proposing both courtyards and interblock walkways as part of the project. A courtyard is proposed to be located along Dolores Street and adjoined to the sidewalk at one of the primary entrances to the site. Second courtyard is proposed to be centrally located on the site between the 4 buildings and will be adjoined to the portion of the interblock walkway. The interblock walkway provides access from Dolores Street as well as 5th through the center of the project site and will connect to the Lincoln Lane development, an adjacent building site with frontage on Lincoln Avenue. Right-of-way improvements are required for all new buildings within the commercial district. The applicant has prepared a comprehensive public way improvement plan that includes the installation of 7 new street trees, construction of new stone curb and gutters along 5th Avenue as well as Dolores Street, construction of a new permeable paver sidewalk adjacent to the subject site, construction of a new ADA ramp at the corner of 5th and Dolores, construction of a new driveway apron, and repaving Dolores Street as well as 5th Avenue to the center lines of the street adjacent to the subject property. The applicant is proposing to locate a stormwater treatment facility as well as a PG&E transformer in the public right-of-way. Conditions of approval have been included that these features shall be relocated on site unless it can be sufficiently demonstrated that it creates a significant hardship or is technically infeasible. Any equipment located in the right-of-way would also require approval of a separate encroachment permit. And for the 2 noted conditions, granting approval of this project does not guarantee approval of any encroachment permit. Staff is recommending approval for the project because there are conditions in place that would require substantial effort be made to locate the subject equipment on site prior to the application of any encroachment permit. Based on the parking factors for the service commercial district and the proposed land uses, the site has required 27 on-site parking spaces. The applicant has proposed 28 parking spaces, all of which are proposed to be located in the subterranean garage. The proposed 28 parking spaces will be split between the 12 residential units. 1 parking space is required for each unit, and the remaining 15 spaces would be dedicated to the various commercial uses with 1 extra parking space provided. The design of the parking lot also complies with the design standards outlined in the municipal code. And I'm just going to take a quick water break. All right. So there are 3 use permits to be considered along with the project. The first is for an increase in commercial floor area. The specific findings for approval are outlined on the slide as well as the findings made within the staff report. There are a number of associated code requirements and conditions of approval associated with the future commercial uses pertaining to noise, establishing a commercial loading parking space, hours of operation, and establishing processes for review of future business license applications. A use permit is also required for the proposed residential density of the project, which is 33 units per acre. There are no specific findings required to be made aside from the findings required for all use permits. 12 apartment units are proposed, again 10 on the 2nd floor, 2 on the ground floor. The units will range in size between 622 square feet and 1,863 square feet, with 3 of the units being less than 650 square feet as required by the zoning code. 10 of the 12 units proposed will have private open space areas, with the mezzanine units having a private terrace area. A number of conditions of approval have also been included specific to the residential density related to prohibiting short-term rentals, prohibiting commercial uses on the 2nd floor, further subdividing units, and prohibiting timeshare uses. The final use permit to be considered is related to the basement area. Again, there are no specific findings required to be made for the basement aside from the findings required for all use permits. The applicant has proposed a 15,292 square foot basement that includes the parking for the site, a storage area, a trash and recycling room, electrical room, and a janitor's closet and restroom facilities for the building. A number of conditions of approval have also been included specific to the design and utilization of the basement, such as garage ventilation and access, and then conditions regarding the trash collection and storage. So the general findings for all 3 use permits were made in the staff report, and the project meets the applicable findings. So design guideline 8.2 states that new buildings should not imitate styles of the past, but strive to achieve compatibility with the old. An earlier design of the project included a Tudor-style building. The initial feedback received was that this building conflicts with this design guideline. While the initial feedback received was not to imitate styles of the past, some members of the community continued to voice support for the Tudor style throughout the public review process, even when the design was omitted from the project. The applicant has elected to revisit the Tudor style, and while stylistically similar, has taken a different design approach as to not imitate styles from the past. The applicant included a design narrative in their application materials in which they describe how the building is differentiated from the existing Tudor style and is not an imitation of existing Tudor buildings, but instead they took inspiration from Tudor traditions and designed a building in a more contemporary style and form. Staff concurs with this statement and the design approach to achieve compliance with this design guideline. Design guideline 8.3 states building forms should complement the rhythms established by other buildings in the immediate vicinity. The subject site complements the rhythms, forms, mass, and scale established by buildings in the vicinity. While the new development is proposed to be a 2-story building set amongst 1-story buildings, the zoning code and general plan support the development of mixed-use buildings in the core commercial land use designation, and the buildings have been designed to be sensitive to the surrounding 1-story buildings. The buildings are broken into smaller building forms that reduce the overall scale of the project, and the resulting building pattern is consistent with the majority of the surrounding sites in the immediate facility that are primarily comprised of 80-foot wide lots. While within the project's vicinity of Dolores Street, it's primarily made up of 1-story buildings. The combination of open space areas, the roof forms that are pushed back away from the street, the buildings set back away from adjacent properties all help to create a natural transition between the existing 1-story buildings and the proposed 2-story development. And while there are more 1-story buildings along this area of Dolores Street, there are 2-story buildings that exist along 5th Avenue and are consistent with the existing development pattern. So the project is consistent with Design Guideline B. Each building within the plaza is treated as a consistent whole. Lines of construction, patterns of openings, and such details such as trim, window style, door dimensions, wall color, and building and roof forms are integrated and consistent throughout each of the 4 buildings. The project is consistent with Design Guideline C pertaining to window styles. All windows proposed are consistent with the architecture of the building in which they are located. The project is not consistent with Design Guideline D, which encourages the use of recessed doors. However, this is a minor deviation from the design guidelines, and while the commission could condition the project to include a recess at each door, staff recommends that this be found as an acceptable deviation from the design guidelines as allowed by the municipal code. The project is consistent with Design Guideline E pertaining to building materials. The proposed materials are consistent with the traditions established in the commercial district and are consistent with the commercial design guidelines. If requested by the commission, staff can walk the commission through the digital material book or answer specific questions regarding the building materials. The project is consistent with Design Guideline G regarding landscaping. The landscape plan includes both landscaping on the site as well as in the right-of-way. 7 new street trees are proposed, including a mix of upper and lower canopy trees, including 2 Monterey pines, 3 Brisbane boxes, and 2 fern pines. A Japanese maple and an Appalachian dogwood are also proposed to be planted on site. In addition to the new trees, a comprehensive landscape plan has been proposed that includes new landscaping on the site as well as planting within the tree wells in the right-of-way. And then as conditioned, the project will meet the design guidelines pertaining to exterior lighting. Each building will have a unique light fixture compatible with the architecture of the building upon which it is placed. Unlike the residential design guidelines, there are no guidelines that state that the lighting needs to be shielded and downlit. However, the city's lighting ordinance prescribes lighting intensity limits. In this case, it's 8 candle foot power, taken at a certain distance from the storefront. There are certain areas of the site that exceed this lighting intensity limit. Those areas are highlighted on the photometric plan on the slide. So we do have conditions of approval that state that the applicant will need to revise the lighting plan to comply with the city's lighting requirements, as well as conditions of approval that say that lighting should not overhang the public right-of-way. So staff is recommending that the project be found categorically exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act pursuant to Section 15332 infill developments. The applicant did have a traffic study prepared by a traffic engineer and found that there would be no impacts to traffic. Staff also made a number of findings that were included in the staff report and attached that we can walk through should the commission have any questions about this exemption. And with that, staff recommends the Planning Commission adopt a resolution approving a design review application, use permit, and associated coastal development permit as described on the screen. And that concludes my presentation. I finished 8 minutes early.
Good job.
Okay, are there any questions for Evan from the commissioners? No questions on this side? Okay. All right, thank you, Evan, for your presentation. Okay, before we move on, I want to kind of get the ground rules here. As far as speaking times, I typically allow the applicant 5 minutes to make their initial presentation. They will be allowed additional rebuttal time as is necessary. Usually I limit that to 3 minutes. Comments from the public, those are limited to 3 minutes. So at this time, I'm going to invite the applicant to come forward and make their presentation.
And while Mr. Runkey's coming up, if you're sitting on the floor, there's 2 chairs up here at the front. If you'd like to sit, there's 2 open chairs, and it looks like there's a couple have opened up. So I apologize, we don't have any more chairs for people to sit on, but there are 2 up here in front if you'd like to sit down here.
Chair and fellow commissioners, my name is Henry Runkey. I'm with Wald, Runkey & Dost, and I was hoping to maybe start the presentation with a video, and staff wasn't sure whether they were going to do it or they wanted me to do it. But I'd like to be able to show you the fly-through, because one of the comments during our October 10th hearing was you requested that we either provide a scale model or do some sort of electronic version of a fly-through. So if I can do that without taking away from my 5 minutes, I'd appreciate that.
Yeah, that's fine. Go ahead.
Sebastian, can you flip it over, please? I think it's up on the other screen.
Hopefully everybody's had a chance to go onto the website and see the fly-through. I think it really illustrates what the project will look like when it is completed. When the you can hit play at any time. I'm just going to talk over the fly-through. When you start to look at the fly-through and see how it integrates with the community, it feels and looks like somebody had taken part of Carmel and put it into a 3D model. And that was really the goal of what we were trying to accomplish with the design of Ulrika Plaza. And so I'll just let you kind of look at the fly-through. It's about 2 minutes long, and it just shows the open space, it shows the interblock walkways, it shows the 4 different buildings with the different building architecture, the level of detail that's going to be developed as part of the project. And so I think you would look at this and hopefully agree that it's a much, much better project than we had when we came here 4 meetings ago. And hopefully we've all seen a project now that we can embrace and move the project forward so that we can fill the hole in the ground. And that's the overall view. Pretty cool video. Again, my name's Henry Runke. I'm with Wald Runke and Dost Architects. I've got Peter Silva here, who's part of my organization, who is integral in a lot of the design work that we see today. We also have Chris Mitchell and Ryan Eschleman, who is with Esperanza and their office here in Carmel. And Esperanza is part of Mr. Patrice Pasteur's companies that he has, and as we're all aware, he's done a lot of work here in our community. So again, at the last meeting, we came to you in October, almost a year ago now, and asked for direction on, here's a concept. We've made improvements. We think we're going in the right direction. Please take a look at the bulk, the mass, how we've moved massing down, how we've changed the apartments, how we've been able to make the project respond to many of the Planning Commissioner comments that we had received prior. And you guys gave us some really good direction. And we listened to that. And I think hopefully you'll agree that this project has improved quite a bit since even October. We also listened to the public input. We had a lot of input, and I think that the comment made by staff relative to, hey, we had a prairie-style building on the next to the Art Association, that has evolved back into more of a Tudor type of a design, and I think that we've got a lot of positive feedback related to that. So I think we've made a lot of progress. In fact, I've been doing this for a long time, and I've never seen a situation where we've had so much positive public comment on a project in my career doing this. So hopefully it speaks to the support that we have in the community, and it speaks to the design, because I don't think that we would get this if it was the first design that we put in or other things. I think what we've seen is that all of the input we've received from the Planning Commission and from the public has created a better project. And that's what we really wanted to achieve. So the other thing that I have is I have a very happy owner who has looked at this, and though the process was hard, we've made a lot of progress. And at the end of the day, I think everybody is very supportive, including Mr. Pastor, of where the project has gone and the end result of hopefully where we are today. So with that, I'm here and our team is here for any questions. We have reviewed the conditions of approval, and we're good with that. We've worked really closely with staff over this last 10 months, and that was a great report that Evan did, and we really appreciate all of the input we have received from staff. And there's been a lot of back and forth. With that, I'm going to not use up all my time, but if there's any sort of questions you might have, I'd be happy to answer them. And then also there was comments at one of the prior meetings relative to a design narrative, so hopefully you were able to read that and kind of really feel where the design team is going as far as how we've been able to incorporate all these ideas and concepts into what I think is a much better project than we've ever seen. Thank you very much.
Okay, so you're open for questions at this time?
I'm open for questions.
All right, are there any questions from the commissioners for the architect? Go ahead, Commissioner Locke.
Thank you. First question I have for you is, what is the current width of the sidewalk on Dolores as proposed in this project?
Peter, do you know about 12 feet?
12 feet, and was that what we saw last October?
No, it's been increased.
Okay.
There was a couple comments relative to the streetscape along Dolores. There was at one point we had the Spanish Revival building was pretty much right up against there. There was a suggestion by the planning commissioners to push that back and create more of an arcade appearance, which we've done. We haven't officially made it into a walking arcade, but we've pushed it back like an arcade, and then we've developed landscaping to add some greenery into the design. So it was a super suggestion.
Yeah, no, and thank you for doing that. What is the width of the inner block walkway?
It varies. What's our minimum width, Peter?
It's about 42 inches. Very narrow at pinch point corner.
Yeah, so that's the minimum, but it's also wider in other locations.
I can
Okay.
expand on that as well. In order to qualify for the floor area bonus, it needs to be 4 feet in width, and it meets a minimum of 4 feet throughout the entirety of the walkway.
Okay.
So the
And-
correct answer then is 4 feet.
So, yeah. And I think that's it for now. Thank you, Henry.
Thank you.
Okay, any questions from these commissioners here?
No.
Mr. Karapov?
I wanted to ask about the transformer on the 5th Street. I understand it's a pretty big one, and it's in the right of way. Is there a way to put it in the basement? There's an electrical kind of area in the basement.
Yeah. We wish we could. Unfortunately, we're working with PG&E. And if anybody works with PG&E, you realize that they have their own set of rules. And they want to be able to bring a truck and equipment and a crane and be able to pick the transformer up without having to necessarily go into your property very much. Putting it in the basement, they wouldn't be able to get access to it, so they've denied us that request. And so we've been looking at some other alternatives, and we've been working with staff. And I think that what we were hoping to do was, as the project moves forward, we would work with staff, PG&E, and come up with a consensus and Public Works as to what the most reasonable alternative would be to be able to accommodate the transformer. And the transformer size is really driven by the electrical loads on the building. And so there's other options that we also have. There's an existing transformer that's located on Dolores in the street. It's possible that we might be able to make that larger and expand that well for that. So we're just exploring a lot of different options, and that'll come and be finalized when we get into engineering.
And one of the things that I could, Commissioner Karapetkoff, add is that you probably noticed from Evan's presentation, we have a condition of approval on there that says basically the applicant needs to do everything they can, make every best effort possible to get that transformer and the other encroachment on site. And if they can't, then we need to have some sort of proof. It'd be a letter from PG&E saying it's not technically feasible. So staff's going to press on that. And ultimately, the Planning Commission's decision today does not approve or deny those encroachments. They would still need to come back to the city and get an encroachment permit, which would include making sure that there's insurance, that it's installed properly, and all that stuff. So just want to give you a little bit of information on that as well.
Okay, any other question? One more question here from Commissioner
Yeah,
Locke.
I have 2 more for you. On the plans that were submitted with the staff report, there was a archway between the 2 buildings on Dolores Street, but your fly-through does not show that. Was that removed at this point?
There's a few inaccuracies on the fly-through because as we would do the fly-throughs, we would continue to refine the design. So the plans are accurate. There are some things, for example, in the fly-through, it shows kind of more like an interlocking paver in the courtyard area. That's actually going to be a flagstone.
Okay.
So I would say the fly-through is about 97% there. But we wanted to be able to find a point to say, okay, we've done enough fly-through, let's move on. But the plans are really the ones that represent all the final materials and the final shapes that we will have on the project,
Okay.
including that arch.
Can you describe the private gardens that have been added since the last time we saw this project?
Well, we've always had terrace space up above off of many of the units.
Right, but there wasn't planting areas up there, at least. I
Yeah,
don't
so
remember
what
seeing
we've
that.
done is we've actually added more greenery up there. We already had some green roofs, and then we had the solar panels, the PVs. And then in addition to that, we were looking for opportunities to try to create some more green space. So that's what we've done.
Okay, thank you.
Just makes a nicer patio in our opinion.
Any other questions? All right, thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay, at this time, members of the public can come forward. I will allow 3 minutes, but if you're just approving the project, just come up and say you approve it, and then, we can kind of move on. We've got a lot of speakers here tonight, but if you want to make specific points, you are welcome to take your 3 minutes.
Hello, my name is Jeffrey Beckham. I'm one of the board of directors at the Carmel Art Association, and we naturally have a very deep interest in the project and in getting the pit filled. First of all, I want to commend the architects and the planning commission and the developer in just keeping going at this. I know it was difficult. You were getting a lot of criticism, and I know what you were going through. And I really appreciate that you took the time to get it better. It's significantly better than it's ever been, and I really appreciate it. I know that I made a comment the last time I was here that we were very concerned about the scale of the buildings next to our garden along the street, and that was taken into consideration. They pulled that down to put a deck in that area and gables along the side of our building, and that will help significantly. So thank you. And we look forward to having this finally built. It's been a number of years. But we still do have some grave concerns about the upcoming construction and what it will mean to our historic building. And there's a reason for this. During the initial developers' excavation and subsequent driving of pilings into the right along basically our building, our 1930s addition, which was a poured-in-place concrete gallery room, the wall along the north side up against the pit sank 2 inches. We had geoforensic experts from San Francisco come down and verify it, and they determined that yes, it indeed did sink, and yes, it was the reason for it sinking was the digging of the pit and the vibrations from the pile driving. Well, that is going to be, I'm afraid, repeated. They're just about ready. When they do start construction, they're going to have to pull those pilings out. Those steel I-beams are going to have to be vibrated out of the space. And we're built on a sand dune, as most of Carmel is. And what happens when you remove what holds the sand in place under our building? We're very concerned that our building will continue to sink, and unless something is put into place that guarantees that we're going to have some kind of resolution, if there is a problem, we'll be in the same position we are now. The original developer simply said, it's not our problem. He said that it's your problem. I deny all responsibility. And we showed him the report from the geoforensics experts, and he said, I don't care. I'm not doing anything, so sue us. Well, we're a local arts community organization that's a nonprofit. We don't have the funds or the interest in fighting a major developer.
Can you summarize where your time's up?
Okay, so we are hoping that you could perhaps put something into the conditions of approval which would say that if there is a problem, that it would be resolved by the contractor or the developer. And there was.
Thank you. We'll take that into consideration.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Go forward, Stephen.
Hi, Stephen Moore, resident of Carmel Woods. And although I am known as all things PAC rep here and elsewhere, I am speaking as an individual tonight. I made a couple of notes so I don't ramble too much. Having said that, I can only hope that the remodeled Golden Bough will one day look as stunning as this project does. I find the entire design to be, in a word, gorgeous. To no one's surprise, I especially appreciate the Tudor elements, which quite frankly take me back to so many of the old pictures and clips of old Carmel. I think the original early Carmel bohemians would feel right at home at these buildings, even with the modern elements. In terms of the structural projections, I honestly find these projections are character-defining elements. I hope you allow them to stay. I would encourage the commission to approve the project. I would also like to add that PAC Rep's building designer, world-renowned theater architect Richard McCann, found the design absolutely appropriate for the city of Carmel with a perfect relationship between architectural elements. Bravo. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Chairman LePage Assistant Chairperson Locke, members of the commission, Tim Blomgren, 3rd Northeast, Torres at 5th. One of my main concerns in this whole city is the idea of the incomplete hole-in-the-ground projects that you see throughout the city. It's been in the Pine Cone, and you have this project and this site, and in my own next door neighbor had a project that went on for 4 years, and a lot of time it just stopped, and it really had very negative impact on the neighborhood. I know Brandon and Chip Rurg came out to the site, and they thought that was very unfair. And so I'm very sensitive to holes that just sit in the ground, and I think this is a good opportunity for that. In addition, I'm as all of you are aware, I'm a retired member of the San Francisco Planning Department. I was staff there. And as you are aware in the media, there's a lot of vacant buildings now in San Francisco, many of which were my projects. And I do not have to tell you that has such as a negative impact on a town. You hear these terms like doom loops but if you want to buy into that or not, that's your thing. But I just see this as an opportunity for our city. And the design is gorgeous, as my dad would say, is quality. It's an infill development, category exempt by CEQA, and I would recommend accepting staff recommendation and approve this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good evening, Chair, fellow commission members. My name is Joaquin Turner. I'm the current president of the board at the Carmel Art Association. And I think Jeff Beckham, our House and Grounds chair, covered our main concerns. But I also wanted to remind everyone, since I've read a lot of articles and I've heard a lot of talk and discussion about the quote-unquote unsightly hole and the aesthetics of the new building, but actually very little talk or even acknowledgement of the damage that the pit has caused to two of Carmel's most historic institutions, and that's the Carmel Art Association and the Carmel Foundation, their apartments to the rear of the project site. Not many people know this, but the Carmel Art Association is actually a Murphy House, which is now our Beardsley Gallery, and obviously considered an important historic building to the city of Carmel. We first brought the damage to the attention of the original developer back in 2019, and shortly after to the city as well. At the time, the city told us that they could not intervene unless our property was deemed unsafe to the public. Well, if that happened, we most likely would have to have closed permanently. So at this point, we should never have to consider that or even discuss that possibility. I bring this up in hopes that really of avoiding this type of problem in the future for both homeowners and for other businesses and institutions in Carmel. I hope that the city can create or implement some kind of intervention to prevent huge holes like this from sitting for years, compromising the properties surrounding them, as Jeff mentioned and a couple others, that much of Carmel is on dunes, and the engineers we hired confirmed that, you know, if you leave a hole in the ground, sand's going to find a way to fill that hole. So anyway, on a lighter note, I just want to let everyone know that we're celebrating our 96th birthday this Saturday. Yesterday was our actual birthday. And so between 4 and 7 on Saturday, please come out and have a slice of cake and celebrate this important institution with us. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi, my name's Frank Laurie. I'm a resident of Carmel. My wife and I moved here 20 years ago from Malibu. I'm retired from the architectural profession, sort of. When it's in your blood, it's in your blood. But in any event, hats off to WR&D. I think it's a beautiful design. I think the scale of it's wonderful, the stepping back, the various styles of architecture that blend and feel like it's always been in Carmel, as well as the mixed use of the residential and the retail. So I just would like the commissioners to know, and the designers, that I think it's a beautiful job. I hope to see this get permitted and built, and a certificate of occupancy where we can celebrate a job well done by the city and the owner and those who participated. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Carol?
Chair and commissioners and staff, Carol Hall, Carmel Preservation Association, and I'm only going to take a couple of minutes. I will read you a letter printed in the Pine Cone in part, titled, "Do You Care, Carmel?" And I think we can say we do care. Look at the number of people that are here on Zoom and in the audience and who've written letters. This is the third attempt by Mr. Pastor to gain approval for the Eureka Plaza plans. The first plans were submitted back in April of 2001, over 2 years ago. I think it is safe to say that we all would like to see something built in the huge unsightly hole, but not just something. The owner has revised the plans with each submission, and thank you for your work on that, at great expense, I might add, to try to respond to the desires of the commissioners. But now, with the state mandate to add housing in the village, this project includes 12 rental units, as Evan said, plus a design that fits into Carmel in the village character, the time is ripe to move forward with the project. Yes, some say the plans are too large, but heights are within the restrictions allowed. Some say the mezzanines are a third story, but they are allowed, not defined as a story in the codes, and are set back and allowed. If we want to change our codes and guidelines to require smaller projects, then we residents need to get involved in doing that for future projects. After the second denial, a survey of the pit's chain link fence asked if at the chain link fence asked if residents preferred first the original modern design submitted by former owners, which was larger than this one, by the way, Mr. Pastor's Tudor and Mediterranean style, similar in facade to the present submission, although the current design massing is far smaller, or 3, a beach style design. Responses by a total of 141 people that took the survey at the fence indicated a preference for the Tudor and Mediterranean design by 83%. Consequently, Mr. Pastor is again submitting a design favored by the residents. The Carmel Preservation Association cares about whether the unique character of our village is preserved. If not, we will continue to become more like every other city. For that reason alone, we are in support of the Eureka project. We consider this project the canary in the coal mine. In other words, we wanted to see if any of the 1,000+ people who signed our petition asking if they wanted to keep Carmel traditional and unique would write in or show up. The residents and visitors to Carmel are speaking up. Thank you.
Thank you. Ken, come on forward.
Ken White, a resident. I'm going to plagiarize Greek mythology a little bit and talk about a gentleman named Sisyphus. I think that's how you say it. He was charged with a job of rolling a large, heavy, round boulder up a steep hill to try and get it to the top. Every time he got up to the top of the hill, the boulder rolled down to the bottom in the canyon. So his next job was to roll it all the way up to the top of the hill, almost get to the top, and it would roll back down. And his job was to keep doing that. Changing a little bit, I'd like to compliment the public on this whole project, either side, whatever they're on, that the time that they spent researching with you folks and testifying at hearings and being public and being heard public, trying to keep Carmel a very special place after even 107, 8 years trying to keep it there. They stuck with it. And finally, I want to compliment the Planning Commission in itself, that you stuck with the public, you listened to them, and you've come up with a very, I won't say you, a very good project is in the works right now. So let's do this. Let's relieve Sisyphus of that boulder as it gets to the top of the hill. Find a depression and have him drop it into that procession and get on with the project, and thank you.
Okay. The next speaker, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Paul Fallworth. I'm a resident of Northwest Carmel. I do support the plaza in its current design. I've followed the many iterations from the initial dead-end courtyards to the now beautiful passageways. That's a sense of discovery when you walk into this area, which is sort of similar to some of the other passageways in Carmel-by-the-Sea. So I do support that. And I like to say I do like it. Thank you.
Thank you. Another speaker coming.
Hi. Hello. Hello. I'm Allie Miner McDaniel. I'm an artist, and I've been here for 30 years. And I just have to say that I think that this project is the most spectacular thing I have ever seen to be possibly built in this town. It's like a dream beyond anything I could imagine. It's kind of like having a little trip to Europe right down the street from where you live. It absolutely outshines anything else that's across the street or next to it. I don't care how old it is, this looks older. It's spectacular, and I think if we keep looking at this magnificent man, Mr. Pastor, who loves this town just as much as any one of us, and perhaps a lot more. I think if we keep looking at this gift horse in the mouth, he may just turn around and say, fine, keep your lot, I'm gone. And if that happens, we have lost one of the greatest gifts we have ever been given. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Thank you. My name is Garth Behrman. I've been a resident of Carmel for 25 years. I'm fortunate enough to have a house on Torres, which is affectionately known as Comstock Hill. We live next door to the Hansel and Gretel. I've worked out that over the last few years, we probably get 80 to 100 people coming to visit that area every day of the week. I worked out very quickly that probably brings to Carmel in this town, this wonderful area, literally millions of dollars every year. And they come to look at the architecture, the traditional, beautiful architecture that we've enjoyed in Carmel for so many years. That's why I was so pleased to see this development take that traditional look and not have one of these awful glass and steel boxes put where you can see it at any town in America. These people are coming, they're voting with their feet, they love Carmel, and thank you very much for all you've done to maintain that wonderful tradition that this town has got. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please come forward.
Good afternoon. My name is Lee Rosen, and I am a property owner on Dolores between 3rd and 4th of a 2-story home, approximately a block and a half away from this proposed project. I would like to speak personally, as well as for many of my acquaintances who support wholeheartedly this project as it is currently being presented. We're extremely impressed by the work that Esperanza has done to produce the current graphics and the design concept which fits our village, since it's certainly aesthetically charming as well as practical with its mixed use of both commercial and residential accommodations. We believe that Mr. Pastor has approached the project, and his team is really understanding at the moment the need to preserve the appropriate architectural values and enhancing our landscape while providing a project with charm and the type of open spaces that are in other courts and passageways for which our town is noted. And so I hope that the Commission looks favorably upon this project as it's currently been reviewed so many times and it's been presented now, and encourage the passage of the approval. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
My name is Neil Cruz. So I take it that my concept for a community swimming pool is now off the table. Well, needless to say, I'm very disappointed. I want to thank the Planning Commission for bearing with this thing for, is it 6 years or 7 years that you guys have lived with this, this particular location. In the course of that, we've all learned something. We've learned a lot from your comments and your criticisms, and those of you suggested, why weren't we there in the beginning? We've all learned from this, and I thank you for that. I want to thank the architect for showing amazing skill and agility. I really respect this man and his work. And of course, I want to thank the owner for his incredible patience and because he listened to the residents of Carmel. This was sent around in an email this morning, and so I wanted to read this to you. It was from a travel brochure kind of thing, and one of the quotes, they talked about Carmel Beach being one of the finest beaches in the country. And this sentence is, visitors who venture inland are treated to a charming village lined with boutiques, eateries, and European-style architecture. And we are now going to continue to be known for that European-style architecture, and people are going to continue to come here to see something that they cannot see anywhere else. I also want to thank the residents for showing up today and stating their feelings about this. That means so much that the residents could be heard. And so we now see that we have, by the way, how many of you in the room are in support of this project? Could I have a show of hands? Okay, that's virtually nobody. So I think we've finally gotten to a place, all of us together. But I want to thank all of you for the work in getting here, and I have learned so much, and I appreciate it so much. So thank you very much. I look forward to, I want to thank the staff, by the way, for an excellent presentation. If we could approve this with the staff's recommendation, the residents want it now, and this is a new chapter in the history of Carmel. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Neil. Next speaker, please, come forward.
Hi, my name is Christy Ramers. I'm a third-generation resident and business owner in Carmel. I actually really support the project. I think it's really exciting to have this new thing there in the space that we've had this pit for so long. But I have a couple concerns that I'm here to talk about. The one concern I have is all the doors to the shops are within the courtyard, which takes away from I should just read what I wrote here, right? Yeah, I feel the design is turned away from the public by having the doorways of the buildings all within the interior of the building and not out to the street. Having access to the shops and offices from the street is part of Carmel's design guidelines. This takes away from the public experience of the building, and I ask that this be included in the final design. Lastly, I looked at the definition of mezzanine, which is a floor that is in between two floors. The International Building Code also says that a mezzanine should be 1/3 or less of the square footage of the floor below. All four of the current so-called mezzanines are over the 30% square footage. This is then classified as a third floor and not a mezzanine. I ask that you look into this definition and the International Building Code, since we do not here in Carmel have a clear description of what a mezzanine is, but we do have a clear-cut rule about no third stories. I can understand the reasoning for wanting more square footage for the apartments, but if one builder is allowed this, then everyone will want it. We have codes to make sure that we all have the same rules. Thank you so much for your work and for working so hard to keep Carmel the beautiful, special village that it is. I know this project has been a lot of work for you, and I want to make clear that I think the concept is wonderful. It just needs to be the right fit for Carmel's future.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, any more speakers would like to come forward and address the Planning Commission regarding this application? Okay, I see we have a hand up online. Joe Mata, you're waving there frantically, so why don't you go first?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, great. Thank you. I hate to be the fly in the ointment. It is a beautiful project. It's obvious that thousands of hours have gone into this by everyone, including the commission. But my family owns a building behind and above the post office, and this project with the third floor buildings on the back side of it, if any of those apartments have a view of the ocean, they're effectively eliminating our view from a building that was built back in the 40s or 50s by my grandfather. And I suspect that this blind eye to what is called a mezzanine, which is not really a floor, but it looks like, just by looking at the fly-through, it looks like it's a third story back there. So when you look at from our building, it's effectively taking away a considerable, if not majority, of the view that has been celebrated. And I doubt, when that building was built, I doubt my grandfather had the option of adding a mezzanine to increase the height to enjoy even a greater view. I got to note that views are something that shouldn't be taken away from other people. And I've sent in the past a letter to the commission citing section 17.1 subsection K, which talks about private views, and buildings which substantially eliminate an existing significant view enjoyed on another parcel should be avoided. So is it fair to the Mata family, who are third generation Carmel folks, is it fair to them to take away their view to accomplish this project? And it's our position, no, it's not fair. So whenever you see one of those apartments that are facing west, and they have either a back patio or porch, and they have a view, it's just effectively taking ours away. And that's regardless of prior approvals, when other folks were either negligent or missing from voicing these concerns from our family. That shouldn't somehow automatically give a collateral estoppel effect to allow for this to be approved without please considering what you're taking away from the Mata family. And therefore, it's our position that it's a beautiful project.
Mr. Mata, can you summarize? Your 3 minutes are up. So can you summarize your point? The view is your?
I've made my point, sir.
Okay,
Thank you, Mr.
all right.
Chair.
Thank you. We will take that in consideration. Thank you. David O'Neill, you had your hand up. You want to go ahead? Unmute yourself.
Good evening. Thank you so much. I'm very excited about this new design. I think it's going to really help Carmel's charming international reputation. I want to make a couple of comments about the height issue, which I understand is a concern for certain people. As was stated by the previous person, that this was approved at this location to be a 30-foot built structure. So I imagine that the owner bought the site thinking that that was going to be part of his approval. So I think that would be kind of misleading to not approve his after the previous one has been approved. And also, we really need to fulfill our housing application that we've been working so hard on. So I hope that we can approve this design as it's been sent in. And I think it's going to be beautiful, it's going to be charming, and it's going to be useful as well as beautiful for generations to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I don't see any other hands online going up. Anyone else here in the chamber want to make a comment? Oh, Paula, come forward.
Paula Hasdevac, I think you've all done a fabulous job, staff especially, which not many people have mentioned, but I know how hard they work. I would not want to see this get bogged down in things like storefronts, height, which I believe this building is as high or maybe not as high as the previous Daldana Court that was there years ago. So it's time to move forward. I think just about everybody in the room has expressed that feeling. it's a beautiful plan that any city would be very, very happy to have. So good job all around, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Your comments? Is there anybody else from the public wants to make a comment? Going, gone. All right, I'm going to allow the architect to come forward and make final comments.
I'll keep it very brief. Henry Runke, Wald Runke, and Dost Architects. A few items came up. There's the discussion about the geotechnical issues relative to some of the structures. Obviously, this was an issue prior to the purchase by Esperanza, and so they've been working diligently trying to get permission to be able to make necessary modifications so that we can be able to move the project forward. So the project will not move forward until we're able to get those issues sorted out to everybody's satisfaction. So that's a work in process, and we understand that, and we're working diligently to get that resolved. The issues that we have, I think there was a comment about, hey, how come we don't have as many doors coming in off the street? We're somewhat handicapped by the existing structure that's there. We have a parking structure that's been dug. We have to have a certain amount of height in our parking garage to be able to allow for accessible van to get in and out into the parking spaces, which is 8'2". We've got to have a little bit of structure. And the problem that we're having is actually conforming to a sidewalk that is doing this. And so what it does is it limits us on the locations that we can provide full accessibility into the structures. And that's why we've had to take some of the entrances and actually move them into the courtyards, where our preference might have been able to put them out on the street, but we just can't make the ADA work. So it's more of a building code issue than anything. The other question came up about the mezzanines. There is actually the code when you sprinkler a building, it's 50%, it's not the 30%, and so that's why it may look a little different. This is something that we've reviewed with the building official, and they're in concert with the way that we've designed it to make sure it complies. And I think one of the things that we did when we came before the Planning Commission at the last meeting was, hey, before we spend another several months working on this, can we get a kind of this or that on the mezzanines? And there were some real positive comments about, hey, this is something we're going to have to look at in the future in this community, because as we look at the housing element, those types of things, we're going to need to have a little bit of flexibility on some issues. So with that, I just want to thank everybody for their wonderful comments. And unless there's any other comments, I'd like to just close our presentation.
Any other questions for the architect? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. With that, I'm going to close the public comments and start our comments, the commission. Just a couple of things I wanted to bring up. There were a couple issues in the staff report that they felt like they couldn't make a definite finding. One were the projections into the setbacks, so if you want to include that in your discussion, that would be appreciated. The other is the mezzanine. So that's another topic that is open for discussion. Although I do compliment staff, they did give a good background on all the language that is currently in the code and so forth regarding mezzanines. And they also acknowledge the fact that we need to possibly develop, probably develop some better direction or ordinances on that. So having said that, I'm going to invite Commissioner Delves to be the first speaker and make his comments.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Henry and your team in particular. You listened, and the results are awesome. So I'm delighted. Thanks to staff. Evan, you've been, speaking of Sisyphus, carrying this one around for a while. You know what? I'll keep with that analogy. Thanks, Ken. The history of this thing. Let's say Monsieur Pastor is Sisyphus and had to come to us to get approval for his rock. And he came to us about 3 years ago, and really all we told him is that rock's just too big, because it was. It was a 20,000 plus square foot single building, and that's not allowed in our code. And we don't have the authority to make an exception to the code. And that's pretty much what we told him. We gave him feedback on the design at the time, but it was primarily driven just by the size of it. He came back in the second iteration with the same rock. It was still too big, and it wasn't very pretty. It was a design that just wasn't appropriate really here at all. And that's about the time when they clearly gave Henry and his team a lot more authority as local architects to act the way we expect from our local architect community, which is to understand the context of Carmel. Last time you came back, the rock was smaller, and it was very nice. And we still said it's a little too big. And what you came back with this time is exactly right. And I really appreciate the changes that you made to make this project, I think, ready to go. I will address the specifics. I'm fine on the projections. I think most of those are really just offering interconnection, access, egress for the residential level. On the second level, I think it's appropriate to keep all that up there and really have a common balcony walkway, if you will, on the second level, which allows the residents to really not have to go, in and out through the commercial part of this building. So I think it's a good design. It does connect the 4 buildings, but I really believe that the 4 buildings are still intact. And that was a real problem we had with the first 2 iterations. It was just 1 building. And this is 4 buildings and 4 different architectural styles, and I think all appropriate. I think we've got some more traditional Carmel elements on Dolores, and in the back row, in the middle, a little less traditional. And I like the eclectic mix because that's what really Carmel architecture is. On the mezzanines, I'm again fine with this. For starters, because this was a precedent set really by a planning commission. Maybe Michael was here. The rest of us weren't on a previous project. I'm satisfied with the definitions that we do have and how they've been applied by staff. I think we do need some more clarity in our code and our design guidelines going forward. This was also a discussion in the whole housing element that mezzanines could be a way to kind of get more housing out of the height limits that we have. But bottom line, this building does not exceed 30 feet in height, and that's the height limit, and that's what's in the code. The mezzanines are just I think, clever way to use that height and make that residential component better. And a lot more livable. And to me, a mezzanine, it really is sort of a second half level, and that doesn't necessarily mean it's 4 feet tall. And that's really what these end up looking like from within the 4 individual apartments that now have them, which is down from more. To Mr. Mata, we did get to go up on the deck outside of your place today to have a look at how your view will be impacted. We spend 25% of our time as planning commissioners, really design reviewers, looking at view impacts. And we all have our own standard, but I think we've all become pretty good at it. And mostly it involves how much orange netting do you see and what's it blocking. And there is no doubt that this orange netting does impact the Mata's view, but it doesn't eliminate the Mata's view. I think it affects it, in my opinion, not significantly. So Mr. Mata, I hear you, but I think compared to the other view things we've all seen over our years on the commission, it's not significant. I do hear the Carmel Arts Association concern, especially since it's now historical that they have had issue. And I know we've asked this question before in other situations, and in general it comes down to that's not our purview. That's a matter of engineering and law. So I'm not sure there's anything I can do to add to that. Brandon, I'll ask you to clarify, either now or later, if you'd like.
I can do it now if you'd like, sir. So to a great extent, you're correct. I mean, the engineering of this and the safety of it, of the surrounding building, is not under the purview of the Planning Commission. I will say, for what it's worth, that when this comes, so there's always a second step in this, right? And most people know this, but this is the entitlement for the design and the use, and then what comes after this is the applicant team has to submit a building permit. And that building permit is a much more detailed set of drawings. It has engineering done for it. So building plans don't get approved unless the engineering shakes out, and those calculations and those drawings come from licensed engineers. So I guess my suggestion or offer to the surrounding properties is that stay involved through the building permit process, but when the plans come in for that, they will be reviewed to make sure that whatever is done is engineered properly to not create harm to surrounding buildings. And you may want to hear from the property owner of this property as well and see if they have any plans, how they're going to work on those relationships with the neighbors. I can't speak to that personally, but what I can say is that when we review building plans, engineering is one of the things that we look at to make sure that erosion is taken care of.
Other than that, I've looked at the resolution. It's lengthy, 63 conditions. I have no condition to add or take away. And also as to all the 3 use permits, I agree with staff's findings and would be supportive of those use permits. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Dose. Commissioner Karpetkov, your comments, please.
Yes. I have only recently joined the Planning Commission, so I feel a little bit like joining the marathon 1 mile before the finish. But I can say that I followed that project ever since it started back in 2016, and I have seen all the different versions and the improvements over the years. I think both staff and the Planning Commission and the applicant was striving for perfection. And I think that based on the comments from everyone today, we're quite there yet. So I think I'm in full support of the project. I'm sure there will be some small things that we need to figure out with these transformers blocking the 5th Street. For example, maybe we can do it better. But in general, I think the project is there. It's ready for approval. So I'll be happy to support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Locke.
Thanks. Thank you. I will agree with my fellow commissioners on their comments. I do have a couple of just little things that I wanted to bring up. And I think this project is so much better than what we came across last year and even the year before that. I think this is my 3rd or 4th bite at the apple here. And so I'm very pleased that it's got the support of the community, and we hear that, and we definitely can feel it from everybody. As far as the mezzanines go, I think that's the only thing that really concerns me is this potential for looking like a 3rd story. And in this case, they've moved the mezzanines back from Dolores, so they're not something that's in your face. You don't necessarily really see them. I think that's a big plus in this case, but I am concerned that we aren't setting a precedent for future projects that come forward before these the design guidelines have been fully addressed, and we've really looked at what the potential is for a mezzanine addition. And many times people will call them a loft, it really truly is a partial 3rd or 2nd story in these units. So I have a concern about that, but I also think, and I mentioned this at the October meeting last year, that the use of a mezzanine is one way to maximize residential space to meet some of our regional housing requirements that will be coming forward. And so I think it is something we will address, and that will be important, especially in the commercial districts where we do need more denser housing projects. Let's see. And I think the other thing is this particular project, because of where it's situated in town and the fact that it is kind of at the base of where the hill starts really to go up, it doesn't have the same impact with that mezzanine story that it might have if it were down on Ocean Avenue or somewhere where it's a flatter area. Henry, I had asked you about the archway, and I don't know what my other commissioners feel about it, but I don't like the archway. So I would recommend not doing that and separating the two buildings on Dolores Street so they are distinct buildings. To me, there was an arch that it just doesn't look like it belonged right there, but that's my one comment on that. I'm, again, kind of disappointed that there's no real association with the Art Association and being able to, originally some of the plans had a connection to the Art Association building. And I thought that was nice. This does not have that. The outdoor seating in the courtyard is in an area where I'm not sure that there was planning for exhaust or any kind of food service facilities, so just want to point that out. There are no affordable units in this, which again, that is near and dear to my heart. I'd like to see affordable units, but it's not required, so that's okay. And yeah, and I appreciate their pushing the building back a little bit, increasing the size of the sidewalks. I look forward to seeing some of these Monterey cypress trees. There's 2 proposed in the plans. Those will be a nice addition in that area. And I really wish I could have seen a physical model of the project, because the fly-through didn't quite give me the ability to look at it from all the different directions that I might have wanted to see it. But I do appreciate the work that's been done by the applicant, by the architect, and by staff, and appreciate the flexibility. And I think we will have a project that we'll all be proud of. And I can't wait to see what it looks like in the end. So anyway, thank you.
Is this the arch you're referring to?
Yes.
Okay. The arch Commissioner Locke was referring to is in the courtyard on the west elevation of the plans. It's between the, that's the Tudor, and yeah, the Tudor and the Mediterranean. Correct?
Yes.
Okay.
No, between the crafts, it's on 5th, isn't it?
No, it's on Dolores.
Oh, it's right there.
That's the west elevation, yeah. That's on Dolores. No, that's not Dolores.
No, that's on 5th.
Yeah.
Well, that's the courtyard though.
That's the west elevation. That's facing the other. Sorry for the confusion, but we're just trying to get oriented here on the plans. Okay, I just want to make a comment here, kind of clear things up about this process. This is the first design review. We haven't had a resolution prior to this. Before this, we've had design studies, and that's part of the process. And this has enabled all of the community and the commissioners to look at these proposed plans and begin this process. This obviously is a big project. It's got a long history. I've been involved in it since the beginning. And it has a big impact on our community. Everybody's concerned about the style of the architecture, how it's gonna, it really has the ability to affect the character of the downtown in a really large and meaningful way. So this process takes time for something this big. But prior to this time, all the commission has done and all the public has done is given direction to the owner and the architect so that they could come up with a better plan. And I think what we see here tonight, because we have so much support for this, that from the community and positive feedback from the commissioners, that we've created a project which is much better and has the support of the community. So I just wanted people to understand how this process works. It's not that the commission has been turning things down. It's just that we haven't, until tonight, we don't even, this is the first time we have what's called a design review with a resolution to approve or not approve the project. So I'd just like the public to kind of understand a little better of how we make decisions about this and how we move this process along to try to create better projects which reflect the public's concern, which meet the standards, and which meet the guidelines and meet the character of our community. Okay, so specifically the staff really did a great report. Evan identified all the findings which are necessary for us, because this is not only a design review, but also we have use permits involved, and we're required to make certain findings for those use permits, and the staff has done that. Obviously, the things that were left open for discussion were the mezzanine and the projections from the building into the right-of-way. I've looked at those projections. They add a lot of architectural character to the community, to the buildings, and they're on the second story. I think they're very valuable. Also, as a staff report pointed out, we have discretion. We don't have to go exactly according to the ordinances, the guidelines on these commercial buildings. It's not like some other parts of our reviews. So I think those are definitely warranted. They add and make the buildings better, and that's what we're trying to do. That's what the intent of this process is about. My take on the mezzanines was that the language, as staff pointed out, does not refer to, in our land review policies at this point, refers to mezzanines as a floor, not a story. And so I'm going to go with what we have at this point. It's a story, not a floor. What that means is, it means a floor, not a story. What that means is it doesn't get into this third story thing. It just adds to the floor area. Also, this project is within the standards, the height standards. So I think staff is correct in their assessment of this, and I also heard support from all the commissioners regarding the mezzanines, although I think Commissioner Locke is concerned about setting precedents. But we do, as we've said many times, we examine each project on its own merits, and we don't acknowledge precedents. There's a lot of talk about it, but that's not how we approach the review process at all. And I think that is the way it should be done, so we can look at every project on its own merits and see how it works in our community. Other than that, I don't think I have anything additional to say. There was, Mr. Mata's concerns about his view. I went up there, I took a look. Yes, it has impacts, but I agree with Commissioner Delves, they're not significant. There's still a lot of water view up there, and in the service commercial district, the buildings are going to be taller. There's going to be a potential for some more impacts, but it's not a situation where there is an ocean view or significant view is being completely eliminated from Mr. Mata's building. That is not the case at all. So I don't think it's significant, but I do acknowledge there is some impact on it, but it doesn't rise to the level of significant. So, and I think the architect, in the concern about concern of one of the public expressed about having more doorways along Dolores there. I mean, this building was already started, and we're stuck with a certain elevation in that underground parking. So they have it's kind of baked into what can happen along Dolores in terms of accessibility with ADA and so forth. So, having said all that, we have a resolution. I don't have anything to add to it. Commissioner Locke, you had a question?
Yeah.
About the resolution?
Condition number 55.
Let me get that resolution up
Yeah,
here.
sorry, I'm trying to get it.
There it is.
And by the way, I think
55.
I may owe the architect an apology, because I think the elevation that I was speaking of with the archway was actually the interior elevation of the courtyard, and I was looking at it as the outside from the Dolores Street, so sorry.
So,
Okay.
Condition number 5 is second floor commercial uses. Commercial use may take place on.
Isn't that supposed to be may not take place, or is it?
Commercial?
I'm having an issue pulling it up on here. Oh, sorry.
Is that
5
correct?
or 55?
Is that correct?
Which condition number, sir?
Condition number 55. Second floor commercial uses. Commercial uses may take place or be occupied in a space above the ground floor, except as allowed for, should not be, except for.
That is correct. We can take care of that.
Yeah, it should not.
Yep.
Except for home occupations within residential units.
Mm-hmm. So
that was
correct.
In the staff report, it was correctly.
Yeah, the idea is
about.
a tenant of an apartment can use the apartment as like a home office, but
right.
you can't use it as a
so
commercial business space.
that needs to be corrected.
Yeah, we'll take care of that.
Yeah.
Good catch.
All right. Is there any other anything else any of the commissioners want to add or change with the conditions as presented in the resolution?
Would you like a motion?
If we have no additions or changes, yes.
No changes.
Okay. I'll move to approve the resolution provided to us by staff approving design review application DR 20350 and use permit application UP 23-158.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion to accept the resolution as presented by staff with acknowledgement of the correction to condition number 55.
Thanks.
Any more discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Commissioner Delves?
Yes.
Commissioner Karapetkov?
Yes.
Commissioner Locke?
Yes.
Chair LePage?
Yes.
And Commissioner Allen is absent.
And with that, we have an approval for a project at the corner of Dolores and 5th. Congratulations to all of you. Thank you so much.
Let's not do this again, Joey.
So, clear out here a little bit before we move on to our next item. You guys want to keep going, don't you? Want to
Yeah.
keep going? Yeah, we don't. We're tough.
Nice.
Bye, thanks for coming.
Bye, see you.
Okay, we're going to move to the next item here, if we can kind of calm down a little bit out there.
All right, folks, if you don't mind, folks, taking your celebrations outside, we'd appreciate it. We do have to get on to other items. Thank you.
We
Have
gotta
a
get
nice
home.
evening.
We got to go home sometime. Okay. All right, the next item on the public hearings tonight is another design study, or is a design study. This is DS 22-396. It's the Ramos project. This is consideration of a combined concept and final design, DS 22396, and associated coastal development permit for additions and alterations and site modifications, including a 138 square foot addition to the rear and a new entry to the north elevation of a 396 square foot lower level basement expansion, creation of a window well at the front elevation, and new 231 square foot detached garage to the historic Rockwell House. It's located on the northwest corner of 12th and San Antonio Avenue. May I have a staff report, please?
Thank you, Chair. Sebastian?
Let's give it a second. If we could get it put up on the main screen, please, by our illustrious IT support. Still not there, if you don't mind. All right, let me pop downstairs really quick. See what's going on.
Sorry, 703.
Hopefully tech.
I think we're losing that.
704, maybe.
I think we might be pushing it.
I guess the projector is trying to cool down, so we can either, it's just, last item was just too hot.
Too hot.
Projector is losing its mind. So
All right, can we just go ahead verbally and,
we can go ahead and you'll be able to see it on your screen.
oh, here it is.
Yep,
It's
there
up
we go.
now.
So
Okay,
it just
we're
needs
good.
to recycle. So it'll be up in a moment, but it'll catch itself here in a minute. So
So
I
I'll start.
say charge on if the planning commission's okay with that.
Yes, please.
Okay, there you go.
There it is. All right. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Commissioners. This is a combined concept and final design for the Ramos project. Quick background: it's in the historic inventory, and it is a Michael J. Murphy house, and it exemplifies the craftsman style house of the early 20th century. And on June 19 of this year, HRB issued a determination of consistency with the Secretary of Standards for this project. And the project sits on 8,000 square foot lot, and it has an existing 2,135 square feet house with inclusive and attached garage. And the applicant is proposing to add 536 square feet addition, and along with the 231 square foot detached garage at the front. And the additions include a new front entryway in the south elevation, an expansion on the east and north elevation, as well as the new detached garage and basement floor area expansion. In regards to forest character, the City Forest has stated that there are 19 trees on the project site. There are 15 significant ones, 11 coastal live oak, 4 Monterey cypress, 1 magnolia, and 1 holly tree. And the City Forest recommends planting 5 upper canopy trees, and the applicant has proposed to plant 5 Monterey cypress trees. In terms of privacy and view, the staff finds minimal privacy and view impact in any of the additions and improvements. It maintains a single-story form from the street level, and the new windows on the north elevation, even though they have a lower sill side, the 6 feet tall windows, as well as the sloping topography, allows privacy for the north neighbors. In terms of mass cut bulk, the addition does not significantly increase mass, and it is compatible with the site and the adjacent properties. In terms of building and roof, it's a simple addition to a 2-story U-shaped craftsman style house, and the additions will maintain a hip roof style, and it would have a 5 and 12 pitch. The exception being the shed roof that will have a 3/12 pitch, and the garage would have a flat roof. And in terms of site coverage, the project is allowed 971 square feet of site coverage, if 50% of it are permeable. The applicant is proposing 968 square feet of site coverage, and 50% are permeable or semi-permeable. In terms of the proposed lighting, there are 22 exterior light fixtures, 11 bollard landscape lighting, 6 scone lighting, and 5 wall fixtures in 2 different styles, and they're all shielded and down light fixtures. And the lumen levels ranges from 50 to 350 lumens. In terms of fence, they're proposing a 4-foot high grape stake fence along the front and street-facing side, and a 6-foot high grape stake fence along the north and east side. And they are proposing to rebuild the 4-foot stone pillar at the front driveway to 4 feet 6 inches, and also proposing to build a 4 feet 6 inch stone pillar that will lead to the new entryway. In terms of the finished details, the new garage will have a Carmel stone facade and also a flat green roof. And the green roof would be a modular pre-vegetated system with rosemary, lavender, and thyme. And in terms of other finished details for the house, because it is in the Carmel inventory, they have applicants proposing in-kind material, which would entail wood windows, doors, wood siding, wood shake roof, and Carmel stone veneer. And the new addition will be slightly different in the finished materials to comply with the Secretary of Standards. And the staff recommends the adoption of the resolution for the combined concept and final. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer any.
Okay, that's you concluded there?
That's my
I'm sorry. I was looking at something here and I lost my train of thought there. Thank you. Sir, is there any questions for the staff?
No.
Okay, all right. I'll invite the architect to come forward, make the presentation. Mr. Holdren.
Good evening, Commissioners. Craig Holdren with Holdren Liskey Architecture. I believe the owners, Catherine and Tim Ramos, are with us virtually on the screen, or they were earlier. And thank you, Suri. Great presentation. It's been very enjoyable working with you. The owners actually own the current the house immediately to the east of this house on Carmel right now. And so they've actually spent years here looking at this property, understanding it, thinking about it. And so when it came on the market, they were very excited to be able to acquire it. But they acquired it fully cognizant of what it was and what it's supposed to be, its relationship to the community, to the neighborhood, as a 100-year-old historic house. And in fact, they're very, very committed to the idea of being proper stewards of this particular house. So while we are certainly brought some changes to the interior functioning of the house, it's been really, really key at every step to really honor what this house is. It's a modest house in many ways. There it is, of course, a larger lot, and the footprint it moves around a little bit. It has that great east-facing courtyard. But of course, there's a lot of green space around it. It sets back from the corner. It really does a lot of things very successfully. And they were very, very intent on living in this house as it is. I believe you actually got to go inside it today, and so you got a little bit of that whiff of a 100-year-old character, which is again what drove them to this property. Of course, it has nice views and a great location, but our interventions as they affect planning were hopefully pretty modest. There were really a couple areas. One is the new entry that we bring to the south facade off of 12th. As I pointed out today, the existing front door is very strangely placed in sort of the northeast portion of that eastern courtyard. So again, we've done this modest little gabled entry, trying to distinguish it from the hip of the rest of the structure, but at the same time be appropriate with it. But we have that moved around to make a more sensible and reasonable approach from the street. We have expanded upon the basement or the subgrade. I keep being warned by Surrey not to call it a basement. It's not a basement, but it is a subgrade floor. It's there now. We are making a little bit bigger, and we are making a little bit taller. Right now it's about a 6.5-foot head height, and we're getting it up to a standard 8-foot head height. We've increased windows down there to try to improve lights, but again, it is what it is. And then perhaps most significantly, we've detached the garage. Right now the garage is sort of tucked underneath the portion of the house in the north, and we've really sort of pulled that out as a detached element, covered it in stone, and given it a flat roof, a green flat roof, really trying to have something that feels appropriate for the area, but is completely distinctive, not trying to do sort of a mini-me or an iterative idea of what that element might be. As Suri pointed out, maintaining original siding, the windows and openings for the most part are being reused. New windows will be custom made to be appropriate relative to what's there already. The roof forms are maintained, the materiality, the shingles, the rafter tails, all of that remains exactly as it is. The two areas of addition that are attached to the house, sort of that piece in the back, the northeast corner and the south, again, we work very closely with the existing materialities, but make subtle distinctions in detail to make sure that it's clearly evident of what's original and what's new in this case. Anyway, I could talk a lot about what we're doing in the interior, but which is all about sort of trying to maintain that existing character, but I probably rambled on enough. So again, we're very interested in being stewards of this house, and we look forward to your commentary tonight. Thank you.
Are there any questions for the architect?
No.
Thank you. Okay, at this time, I'm going to invite members of the public to speak to the Planning Commission about this application, if they would like to. I don't see anybody come forward. Is there anybody online raising their hand? Can you see? I can't see.
Can you see, Leah?
Yes, there is one, Mr. Chair. David O'Neill.
David, go ahead. You have the floor.
Good evening. Thank you very much. I just want to say, as a neighbor just up the 12th, and also as a member of the Carmel Preservation Association that we love the respect of the design and also the unique and new ways that they're using the property, making it comfortable and pleasant for modern living. So we fully support the idea and hope that it goes through. Thank you so much.
Thank you, David. Anyone else online there? Okay, I don't see anybody here in the chambers coming forward, so I'm going to close the public comments. Open it up to the commission for their comments. Commissioner Locke, you want to begin?
Sure, I'll start. First of all, thanks for letting us get a tour of the house, or at least see what the inside looked like. It's a really neat historic property. I think that this is very tastefully done as far as the remodel goes. I think it'll be definitely an asset to the neighborhood. It's thoughtful, and I think that the detached garage with the living roof is a neat idea. And I'm just looking forward to seeing how this ends up in the long run. So I'm fully supportive of this.
Thank you, Commissioner Locke. Commissioner Karapov?
Yes, yeah, it was, I think the remodel project is wonderfully done. Initially, I was a little bit concerned about flat roof garage, but now that I see the rendering, I think it's a good fit. And the whole idea of moving the entry to the 12th Street is also very practical, makes sense. So everything makes sense in this project. I think it's a good way to remodel a historic house. Thank you.
And Commissioner Dills.
Yeah, I love it. Complete respect for the historical exterior with some thoughtful additions. I like the garage, and then a repurposing of the interior, which will probably ensure it's here for another 100 years. So, delighted.
Thank you, Commissioner Dills. Yes, this is a very nice historic structure. It's a very good representation of the Craftsman era. It was, I believe, built by Michael Murphy. Yeah, and he has a long and really important history with the architecture of this community and the business too. He provided a lot of building materials for local builders. And this is a very nice example. It's on a big lot, and it's a very sensitive approach to improving it. So, yeah, and staff has done a great job with their findings. So I'm in support. We have a resolution, which I don't think we need to do any changes to. Anybody see anything there that they want to change or add?
No.
Okay, if that's the case, do we have a motion?
I move that we adopt the resolution approving the combined concept and final design study and associated coastal development permit for the Rockwell House located at the northeast corner of 12th and San Antonio Avenue, and both the conditions and recommendation of staff as presented in our packet.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion to accept the resolution as presented by staff for approval. Any more discussion? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Delves?
Yes.
Commissioner Karapetkov?
Yes.
Commissioner Locke?
Yes.
Chair LePage?
Yes, the motion is carried.
Thank you very much.
Yep, good luck on your project. Thank you. Okay, that brings us to, I believe, our item number 7 on the public hearings. This is another design study. This is DS 21-436, the Library Projects, consideration of a final design study application and variance application and associated coastal development permit for substantial alteration to a historic resource located on San Antonio Avenue, 1 northwest of 9th, single-family R1 district. Can I have the staff report, please?
Mr. Chair, while Marnie's pulling that up, it was brought to my attention by one of our crack planning staff that in the when we approved the consent agenda at the beginning of the hearing, it was stated approving items 1 through 3. There was actually 4 items on there. I just want to confirm with the commission, we don't have to do anything. The intent was to approve the entire 1 through 4.
Yes,
Okay.
the intent was to improve the entire consent agenda that was
Excellent.
presented.
I just want to get that on the record.
On the
Thank you.
agenda.
Yep. Thank you so much.
All right, well, good evening, Chair and members of the Planning Commission. So the next item on your agenda is a final design study for the library project. So this is an existing 4,800 square foot house on a lot that's over 11,000 square feet in size. It is located on San Antonio, just west of 9th. The applicant is proposing both an interior and exterior remodel, reorganizing the existing floor area with no net increase and associated site improvements. This house is listed on our local historic inventory and is known as Casa Laiolo, or former Mayor Barney Laiolo's old home. So back in December of 2022, the Historic Resources Board did review the project. They adopted a resolution finding the modifications consistent with historic preservation standards with certain conditions. These conditions were included in the concept resolution and have been further addressed in the plans that are before you this evening. One of the items that I'll call your attention to is the balcony on the front elevation. So this balcony will be disassembled and stored during construction and then reinstalled, both the railing and the posts. And because it's an older historic railing, it doesn't meet the current height for building code safety, and the owners would like to increase the height of that. So in an effort to preserve the look of the balusters, a very simple rail is proposed on top, along with a clear acrylic panel to bring that height up to 42 inches for the increased safety. Also, just quickly, I'm going to mention there's a number of nonconformities with this property. We were very careful in the review of this application to make sure that none of the existing nonconformities are expanded or increased. And so this just documents what they are for the record. Again, there's a reorganization of floor area, but no net increase. The third floor is structurally unsound, which looks like the second floor from San Antonio, and does need to be reconstructed. An engineer has already looked at this, and it's been reviewed by the Historic Resources Board as being appropriate. It will go back mostly in kind with a slight shift to the south. Also, there's significant reduction in site coverage, but also a request for a variance because the applicant wasn't quite able to get it down to what the code allows. Just really briefly, with regards to trees, there were some special conditions at the concept hearing. The applicant has addressed this by proposing an upper canopy tree, as well as the 5 ornamental trees at the front of the property. Also, they heard the concerns regarding the driveway gate, and so that has been eliminated from the project. One of the more significant concerns at the concept hearing was the proposed breakfast nook addition on the west elevation. This breakfast nook, was enclosed, and it exceeded the 18-foot height limit in this particular zoning district. It also slightly encroached on a view that the east neighbors currently have. So the applicant has made changes in response to the concerns that they heard. The breakfast nook addition has been eliminated. Instead, they're proposing an extension of the patio with a wood trellis above. They've also shifted this element over to the south. So it's now offset from the wall plane, and this maintains that east neighbor's view. And we did get a letter of support, and that was included in your packet. This is just another perspective of that modification. where now it's an open terrace with the patio trellis, above. Also at the concept hearing, we talked about the introduction of this gable roof above the balcony doors at the upper floor. And the applicant was directed to make a modification in this area. They chose to do a shed roof, which is much more subtle and stays below the existing ridge line, which is important. Finished details. So this is all the same as what you saw back in February at the concept hearing. In accordance with the historic preservation standards, the intent is to preserve as much original stucco as possible, and then use a smooth trowel stucco cement to match the existing conditions. So this is one of those situations where we're not trying to differentiate, we're trying to match existing conditions. There will be a cedar shingle roof. Copper gutters and downspouts was proposed at the concept hearing. The applicant has changed those to aluminum, and they are proposing cedar windows and doors. We talked a little bit about the garage door at the concept hearing. The applicant has provided some additional details. The garage would be a cedar plank door with some iron accent elements, and this has been added to the door schedule. And now, so with regards to the site coverage variance, which is kind of the main topic for this particular project at this point, the project is allowed to have just over 1,200 square feet of site coverage. Currently, there's over 5,800 square feet, and it's probably all impervious, so a lot of concrete and mortar set brick. And so the applicant is proposing to remove all of that existing site coverage with one exception, which we'll talk about. And one of the challenges that have been facing is that this side entry garage at the back of the house requires, a longer driveway than what is typical. So this graphic here shows the different site coverage elements. Again, the existing site coverage is well over 5,000 square feet. At this point, they've got it down to about 3,000 square feet. And this includes the entry courtyard, which is labeled number 3 and is shaded red. This is actually part of the historic fabric and is required to be preserved. It's almost 650 square feet in and of itself. So since the concept phase, the applicant has reduced site coverage by over 1,800 square feet, but is still over what is allowed, and is therefore requesting the site coverage variance. Also, just worth noting, the driveway that you previously saw was at 2,500 square feet. It's down to 1,400 square feet, and it will be all semi-permeable, so with sandset pavers, whereas right now I believe it's all concrete. So an improvement over existing conditions, but didn't quite get to the 1,200 square foot maximum that's allowed. So this graphic just kind of shows how a car would maneuver in and out of the garage. They've really necked down the driveway to try to reduce the site coverage as much as possible. And again, the brick entry courtyard is required to remain. So of the 1,200 square feet they're allowed, over half of it, about half of it is taken up by that entry courtyard. So the request is to increase the allowable site coverage from 1,200 to 3,000. This additional site coverage is reserved for the brick entry courtyard and walkways, to protect the historic integrity of this feature. And then the 1,177 square foot portion of the driveway would also be included in this variance. And this is really just to provide practical ingress and egress to the garage. Staff does find that there are special circumstances particular to this property that warrant the support of a variance, including both the historical status of the property and the requirement to preserve the character-defining features. Staff thought a little bit about alternatives as far as the garage goes, and just found that any other configuration would be a detriment to the historic resource, and keeping the garage in the back is the preferred design alternative. So as the Planning Commission is aware, you are required to make a series of findings in order to support a variance. The staff report kind of goes into detail about each of those findings. Staff does believe, again, that the historic status of the property presents a unique enough circumstance for you to be able to make those findings in the affirmative. So option one is to grant the variance and allow the site coverage amount of up to 3,000 square feet. Again, I think it's important to emphasize that this additional square footage is reserved for the brick entry courtyard and a portion of the driveway. So this isn't, 3,000 square feet, anywhere. It's really specific to these two site conditions. If the commission finds that you cannot make all the findings in the affirmative, you could deny the variance request and require the site coverage be reduced down to the 1,200 square feet. At least half of that would need to be permeable. However, again, that 645 square foot brick entry courtyard does need to remain, so that would be part of the 1,200 square feet. And then a third potential option is you could grant the variance with direction to further reduce site coverage. I think, the applicant has done a really great job trying to minimize it, but certainly, we could look at, potentially eliminating some additional walkways or other smaller features, which wouldn't make a significant difference, but it would bring the total down just a little bit more. So with that, staff is recommending that you adopt a resolution approving this design study application along with the variance request. And we do have some special conditions. Some of these are pretty standard. We did include the Historic Resources Board conditions, as well as a construction management plan. And then just making sure the chimney standards are met. And then a couple special conditions. The new wood fascia and eave does need to match the existing conditions, so we just need a little bit of additional detail on that during the building permit stage. Nothing super significant. And I'll conclude my presentation there, and I'm available for any questions.
Other questions for staff?
Nope.
Marty, I had a question, just for clarification. On the site coverage variance, now is the brick, is it 600 and, what was it, 45? Is that included in the variance amount?
It is.
It is. What's the logic of that? Do we have to include, I'm just kind of trying to sort that out in my mind. That's required to stay.
Correct. So, so it is part of that 3,000 square feet that we're asking the commission to approve.
So if I could jump in, because I think maybe an easier way to think about it is that every site is allowed a certain amount of coverage.
Right.
So this site, because of the size of the lot, is allowed up to 1,200 and some odd square feet of coverage. A better way to think of it might be that they are required to keep that 645, which eats into that 1,200 square feet that they are allowed. So in essence, they're already starting from a detriment of only having 1,200 minus 645. So maybe that's a better way to think about it. The 645 is captured in what they're already allowed, but they don't have any choice of where to put that. That's already been assigned because it's a historic feature of the house.
I guess it's kind of a moot point. You add it in or take it out, it's just the same
Exactly.
thing.
It's just where you want to
I just kind of, it just seemed to me like it should be, I don't know, in my mind, it seemed like it should be out, and then we're just addressing the variance of the additional site coverage.
And I think that's a better way to look at it, sir. I mean, it still counts as site coverage. The 645 still counts as site coverage. And I think the better and more accurate way to look at it is that it counts towards that initial 1,200 some odd square feet that is allowed by right. And so they've burned that up with this required amount. They can't put that anywhere else.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So no questions for?
I have a question related to site coverage. So if the minimum required for the driveway is 1,433 plus the 650 or 645 that is preserved for historic reasons, I am at 2,083 right now. What is the remaining 920 site coverage up to 3,000?
So that includes other walkways, like the walkway on the south side of the house, the projecting balcony on the west elevation. There's also a small projecting balcony on the south elevation. There's some steps because the site does slope down towards the west, so there's some steps throughout the property as well. And then the most significant one is really the patio in the backyard with the outdoor fireplace, and that second floor deck that runs the length of the house, that is also over hardscape. So that entire outdoor living space counts as site coverage.
And follow-up question, does the site have any drainage problems because so much of it is not permeable?
So it would definitely be an improvement over existing conditions because we're going from over 5,000 square feet of coverage down to 3, and a significant portion of that is going to be permeable. They've also prepared a preliminary drainage plan, and they'll be integrating rain gardens into their landscape for additional on-site water filtration. So it will definitely be an improvement over existing conditions.
But right now, the water is probably going into this alleyway and down to the beach, basically, right?
Correct.
Okay.
All right, and they'll be required to meet the drainage requirements.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay. Okay, are there any other questions for staff? All right, would the architect like to come up this time and make his presentation?
My name's Tom Meany. I'm just going to be really brief. We've been working really hard with our historian, our planner, to make these modifications, meeting with neighbors, modifying our design in response to the last hearing we had here. So each step of the way, we've really made a good effort to be responsive to the direction we've been getting from the various members of the community and such. So I think at the end of the day, we're ending up with a good project. I mean, the site coverage thing, we are cutting it almost in half. But the challenge is, when you have the driveway that's down below, you need a functional length to get there and a certain functional backup requirement because it's so far from the street. And so you almost have to have a driveway of a certain size because of where the garage is located. And there's really not much we can do about that. And then beyond that, we've really made a real concerted effort to minimize the hardscape as much as possible. And you're right about your concern about the drainage, because right now, a lot of that hardscape just shoots down into the neighbor's yard, basically. And so by reducing that and collecting it and addressing it with a proper civil engineering scheme, I don't think that we're going to be having nearly the problems that they have right now in terms of site drainage or site coverage. So, and just in terms of the modifications you touched on before, like I say, we got rid of our breakfast room, made an outdoor porch with a covered trellis because we like that relief off of the back elevation. We slid it over just a few feet to open up that sight line from our neighbor's patio that they are very concerned about. And then we modified the dormer element over the upstairs porch, because right now that plate upstairs is about a little bit less than 6 feet. And so to look out any windows, you have to bend over. So have that dormer that kicks over that 7-foot door allows you to basically look out at the ocean standing upright. So those have been the big modifications from our last meeting.
Okay, are there any questions for the architect?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, at this time, I'd like to invite any members of the public to come forward and speak to the Planning Commission regarding this application. I don't see anybody in chambers. David O'Neill's got his hand up. David, you want to go ahead?
Yes, thank you very much. Usually as a member of the Carmel Preservation Association, we don't want to see much changes to things, but they have done such an amazingly beautiful job actually enhancing the beauty of this historic property. We're all so delighted with it. We agree with staff suggestions, and we would really appreciate if maybe the Planning Commission could give them this variance with the coverage of the site, because they have so much restrictions. They've done such a great job with respecting it, and they're really bringing this property back to life that was really neglected for a long time. The only thing that I would like to see is if there was some other solution for the railing with the plexiglass out front, because that would kind of detract from the wonderful beauty from the street. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else online? I don't see anybody. And nobody in the chambers, so I'm going to close the public comments, open it up to the commissioner for their comments. Commissioner Locke, would you like to begin?
I would be happy to. I think this is a fabulous project. I think it definitely is a huge improvement over, as Mr. O'Neill mentioned, a neglected site that I used to walk by pretty much every day. I had a friend who lived in the downstairs area, and it was in need of tender loving care, and this proposal is exactly that. I think that the communication with your neighbors has obviously paid off, and there's support for the project. I think this will be just a tremendous asset when it's completed, so I'm looking forward to seeing this move forward.
Okay, Commissioner Karpetkov?
I think the applicant made a substantial progress, and I like to see the results. In terms of site coverage, I agree that we will not be able to go down to the required site coverage. We have to make a compromise. And I agree with staff that the priority here is to keep the garage out of the view, because obviously you can do the garage next to the property line, but then it will impact the view, and then you may be able to meet your site coverage requirements. So it's better to have a little leeway and grant this variance, give them the ability to keep the garage where it is. The additional walkways around the house, maybe there's something we can do to go lower than 3,000 square feet. If that is an option, I would prefer to do that. The goal is obviously to keep as much of the rain water on the property and not allow it to flow into the ocean or into the neighbor's property. So if we can do anything to reduce site coverage even more, that would be good. But in general, I think the project is getting better, and I think we should be able to improve it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Delps, your comments.
Yeah, I also like this project quite a bit, and thank you to the libraries for taking it on, because this is, it really is, same deal. Walk by it all the time, and you just sort of kind of say, man, what a sad-looking, former beautiful house, and it seems to have a very large asphalt parking lot next to it. And yet the location is extraordinary. And I think this design is extraordinary. I think it's the exact right design for this house and that spot. And just like the last one, I think this will allow this structure to be here in 100 years and still be enjoyed by people. So I'm supportive, and I'm supportive of the variance and on the site coverage. And actually, I'm supportive in its entirety. I think the conditions are unique, and I'm satisfied that you've done what you can, and you've improved you've improved the status quo significantly. And yeah, the driveway has to be there. I think you've done as much as you can. Really, it's still pretty narrow. So but I think especially the terraced landscaping that you've proposed there, it's going to be beautiful to look into the driveway in the future as opposed to now. So I'm supportive of the whole thing and of the resolution that staff has put together.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Dels. Yeah, the variances are based on hardships. They're based on a condition on the site which causes the owner not to be able to use their property in the same way that other property owners would be. and this property clearly qualifies for that. And staff has been correct in identifying the necessary findings to grant this variance. So I think the variance is supported by the findings. And I do want to compliment the architect and the landscape designer and the owner. They've really taken on a historic building, which was kind of an ugly duckling, and they really turned it into something very, very nice. And they're keeping a historic building, which defines the character of this community. And that's how you define the character. You keep the character of the community. You don't tear down the old buildings and build something else. You take what's there, you respect the good parts of it, and you bring it up to the current standards in terms of usability and livability, and you improve it with beautiful landscaping and changing the hardscaping and addressing a very bad drainage problem there that they have now. So it's been very well planned out, and you've also, I compliment you, you've listened to the neighbors, and you've listened to the direction from the Planning Commission, and you've made changes which really reflect that. So we have a motion, which I don't see any necessary changes based on the discussion, unless one of the other commissioners has something want to point out to me that I've missed. You see something there, Commissioner Dels?
I don't. I'll make a motion.
Okay.
I make a motion to approve the resolution provided by staff approving design study DS21436, variance VA 23-239, and associated coastal development permits.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion made and seconded to accept the motion as presented by staff. Any more discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Commissioner Delves?
Yes.
Commissioner Karpetkov?
Yes.
Commissioner Locke?
Yes.
Chair LePage?
Yes, the motion is carried. Good luck with your project. Okay. Okay, we will take a 5-minute recess. We will re-adjourn at, was it 6:35? Is that good? A little more than 5 minutes. All right.
How about 6:33?
It's a negotiation. You know, just go and come back whenever you want.
Just, yeah, we'll be here.
That's what I do. Yeah, yeah. you work with the architect,
So wait a sec, that's the design that you see. Okay, this is the design that's in the packet. the revised-
Yeah, we never said that.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Design.
So this is not necessarily.
He went to go work for a company called IAM. They're the ones that do like our meetings over at Sunset.
They're gonna put that metal gate back up there.
Yeah.
Because it was sitting over there.
Yes.
So while we're working on recruiting buildings, I am.
All right, so I guess I'm gonna have to wait.
This happens to work. So he already knew how to do it. But he only knew like he had to meeting started. So the other guy, here's the CEO of our center, he's not there. So he couldn't figure like how to switch back. So I went down and like,
This is the first time we're getting this, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's
It's interesting, they've already essentially built the ADU with a style.
I was gonna say, yeah, how do you?
And so it's, I know, so they've already introduced us, how we have to make the house look like this.
We don't have any architecture. Nothing. Just has to be within the set. That's it, right? That's it.
you're being
Mad,
watched.
really.
I was just a little nervous that I couldn't at least write.
All right, 6:35.
This is a big thing.
I know, Jesus are the best.
Okay, if everybody could.
Only the best for you guys.
Use that hammer.
Don't tell me where. Don't tell me, I don't want to find it.
Okay, if everybody could settle down, we'll re-adjourn. Do we need to do roll call again?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right, can we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Delps?
Here.
Commissioner Karapetkov?
Yes.
Commissioner Locke?
Yes.
Chair LePage?
Here. Okay, we're up and rolling again. Get logged in here and.
Oh, that's one,
Okay, the last item on our public hearings tonight is item number 8 on the agenda. This is a design study. It's design study 23-092, the Brown Project. This is consideration of a concept design study for the demolition of more than 50% of exterior walls of a 1,755 square foot single-story residence on an 8,000 square foot lot, and construction of a 1- and 2-story additions totaling 1,026 square feet. It's located at the southwest corner of Guadalupe Street and 4th Avenue in Block 45 specific. Have the staff report, please.
Thank you, Chair LePage. So the last item here on your agenda is a concept design study for the Brown property. As you just mentioned, it is located within the Block 45 specific plan area. This area is significant because it's completely surrounded by a historic stone wall. This particular property is at the corner of Guadalupe and 4th. It is an 8,000 square foot lot, but there is a private road easement that runs along the west side of the property. It's about 800 square feet, reducing the buildable area down to 7,200 square feet. The existing home was constructed in 1950. We did do a historic evaluation, and it was found ineligible for the historic inventory. So as I mentioned, the entire block 45, is surrounded by a stone wall. This is the portion of the wall that encloses the Browns' property. There's also a historic iron gate, which provides access to their driveway and their garage. and no modifications are proposed to the wall or gate as part of the project. So the applicant is proposing to demolish more than 50% of the existing walls. So we do consider this a demolition. The existing one-story house is 1,755 square feet, and the proposed residence would be 2 stories at 2,700 square feet. The project also includes a second floor terrace, which we'll talk a little bit more about later. Also, the applicant has made some revisions to this terrace, so you'll be seeing some updated designs for that this evening. So I'm going to start with privacy. Staff was really mindful, as was the architect, of the south neighbor when designing the second-story addition. The addition is sort of tucked into the back corner of the property where it's well screened from, is that Guadalupe? I think it's Guadalupe, by existing vegetation, but it does place the addition closer to the neighbor to the south. Our residential design guidelines do encourage preserving reasonable privacy for adjacent properties. While the property does appear to be vacant right now, and it also appears to be a rental property, we did want to make sure that the proposed design was sensitive to any future occupants. The architect has stepped back the second floor. As you can see here on the right, there's a 12-foot 5-inch approximately setback to the second story, nearest where the window is on the neighbor's house, which is the picture on the left. And the only window facing the south neighbor is a bathroom window. So staff doesn't feel that there would be a privacy impact in that regard. However, the stairs are closer to the property line, and there's a series of 3 windows that could potentially provide views into the south neighbor's front yard. Staff is proposing a draft condition to either raise the sill height above the eye level at the landing or use opaque glass to mitigate that potential impact. Also, with regards to privacy, the original proposal included a 436 square foot terrace. This terrace is approximately 12 feet to the edge of the private drive and 3 feet to the south side yard. It is adjacent to a garage, so not a potential privacy impact in that regards. But it does look down onto the private road as well as the neighbors to the west. Also just want to note that originally, because again you're going to see a revised design, but the original design had a cantilever over the north and west sides of the terrace. Staff in the report, my analysis included a recommendation for greater setbacks for the terrace, which also has the effect of reducing the size. So draft condition number 4 includes some recommendations for a potential setback to mitigate that privacy impact. Again, the architect has a proposal that he's going to present to you with modifications, so you may consider amending this draft condition number 4 based on the information you received this evening. So another element to this project, is the second story addition. It is 624 square feet in size. However, a portion of it is a vaulted ceiling area above the living room. So the footprint of the second floor is a little over 1,000 square feet. I've noted here the various setbacks, so you can see how it really is tucked in that back corner. There are significant setbacks both to 4th Avenue and the private road. However, the vaulted ceiling does add some additional mass to that second floor, and on previous project was deemed to just add to the mass and bulk and was discouraged. So something for the commission to consider this evening. You can see here, this is the west elevation. The plate height at the vaulted ceiling, staff measured at about 18 feet 8 inches, which is a little bit higher than a 2-story plate height. However, because there isn't a floor, historically we've considered vaulted areas a single-story element, so this would exceed those standards as well. So staff is, actually I think I jumped ahead a little bit. I'll come back to the vaulted ceiling in just a moment. But you can see at this location where the ceiling is vaulted, the plate height is a little bit higher. Also on the south elevation, staff measured 18 feet 6 inches, and then 13 feet 3 inches to a single-story element. The architect does have some information I think that he's going to share with you about how these are measured. Staff is recommending condition number 6 that these plate heights be reduced to 18 feet and 12 feet respectively. Not sure what happened to my vaulted ceiling. Maybe it's last. The next element that I identified in the staff report has to do with the scale of the front entry. So the residential design guidelines state that a building should relate to a human scale in its basic forms, and that oversized elements make structures appear massive and should be avoided. And it specifically identifies a grand entry. Staff felt that just the height of the entry at 13 feet 6 inches total with the amount of glass sort of exaggerates the scale, and is recommending that it be reduced to a more human scale before final details. Also related to mass and bulk, the architect has proposed a decorative wall at the front entry. And so you can see the profile of that wall adjacent to the entry door. The wall is somewhat substantial in staff's opinion. It also houses the chimney flue, so it sort of functions as a chimney, but it's intended to be a decorative wall. The Carmel Municipal Code has some very specific standards about the size of chimneys to really keep that mass minimized, and so staff is considering this to be a chimney and has recommended draft condition number 8 that the scale of this wall be reduced to meet the standards for the chimney. The Planning Commission, however, can consider whether it is more appropriate to consider it a decorative wall and be exempt from those chimney standards. And then here's the vaulted ceiling space. So draft condition number 9 recommends that this be eliminated. This would also address that plate height issue at 18 feet 8 inches there as well. But staff does find that it adds more mass to the structure, making it appear larger than what is seen throughout the neighborhood. Just really quickly on finished details, the architect has provided quite a bit of information at this stage, proposing an asphalt shingle roof as well as tar and gravel on a flat roof element. The architect is asking for approval for copper gutters and downspouts. Staff has included draft condition 10 that this material be changed out to something else, which is pretty standard from staff's recommendation. There are some elements of stucco on the walls. The wall cladding is primarily a tongue and groove cedar, and then there's some stone accents at the front of the residence. Windows and doors are proposed to be aluminum clad wood, and then you can see the colors of the proposed pavers. The applicant originally was proposing a stainless steel cable railing system at that outdoor terrace. I think he has come up with an alternative proposal for that as well. Staff was recommending that that material be changed. And then along the private drive, the applicant was going to reconstruct the existing fence, same style, but proposing to install a concrete curb at the bottom. The residential design guidelines generally state that concrete is discouraged, so staff has included draft condition that an alternative material more appropriate for a forest setting be selected. We did receive some public comments, and those were included in your packet. One of the comments was a concern about adequate parking, both to serve the larger single-family home as well as the accessory dwelling unit, which is currently under construction. So state law does not require additional parking for accessory dwelling units, so the city can't require any additional parking for that. And our parking standards only require one space for a lot of this size. Our parking standards aren't based on the size of the home or the number of bedrooms. It's just based on lot size. Also, as I mentioned, there were some privacy concerns. Actually, I didn't mention that. So the neighbors did raise some privacy concerns about the size and number of windows and doors on the west elevation. Staff notes that the first floor living room doors are 8 feet, but all others are at the standard height of 6 feet 8 inches. And in recommending that the vaulted ceiling space be eliminated, it would also eliminate 4 windows that are 6 feet 8 inches tall. The neighbors also raised some privacy impacts, again, from the terrace, looking down into the private drive, as well as the front yards of the homes to the west. And then using the open cable railing design just allows for more views. And so the neighbors were asking for a smaller terrace, as well as a solid railing for some additional privacy. The architect did hear those concerns, and again is going to be presenting a revised proposal to you this evening. Also some concerns regarding the mass and the scale. Again, staff does believe the plate heights are taller than what they should be, and so by reducing those plate heights and eliminating the vaulted ceiling space would significantly reduce the mass. And with that, staff is recommending that you accept the concept design and adopt a resolution with conditions. And these are the 12 special recommended conditions. And that concludes my presentation. I'm available to answer any questions.
Are there questions for staff?
Yep.
Commissioner Delch, you have a question?
Marnie, what's the square footage of this home? The finished square footage?
2,777.
And what was the ADU?
762, I believe.
Okay. And this is an 8,000 square foot lot?
It is, but only 1,700 is available for development because of that private drive. So there's an 800 square foot section of the property that's dedicated to a driveway.
And so forgetting the ADU, what's the allowable square footage? I can wait for that.
Okay. Are there any questions for staff? Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
So the side that has so many windows, it's looking towards the private road, right? Are there any special rules about private roads, or are they treated the same way as public roads or public streets?
That's a good question.
I asked these questions of the neighbors today, actually, and was told that it's not a city street, and that it maybe might be a road association of some sort, but that
Yeah, I can jump in.
Oh,
on this one.
thank you.
Sorry. Yeah, no, you were going the right direction, but I'll save you the breath. So it's true. Yes, this is a private road, so any rules would be subject to covenants or agreements like an HOA or something like that. The city has no jurisdiction with respect to private roads. So how it's maintained, how wide it is, all that stuff, curbs, things like that. None of our regulations apply to that.
How about public access? Can I walk in or drive for the public?
It's a private road.
It's private.
So that's, I don't know if you noticed on our site visit today, but there's actually a sign at the front of it that says private road, which is true. It's just like someone's private driveway.
Is there an HOA in there?
I don't believe there's an HOA. I mean,
So they
we can
just-
ask the property owners if they have some
Yeah,
agreement.
So they just, but it's their responsibility.
It's their responsibility, that's correct.
Okay.
Can you look at the?
Okay. I guess that's all the questions for staff. So at this time, I'll invite the architect to come forward and make his presentation to the Planning Commission.
Good evening, the chair and the commissioners and the staff. It's quite late, sorry about it, that we are late as last item on the project. We started this project last year, and we started talking to the staff and tried to find out all the regulations and special conditions for this lot. And we applied with our first run of design approval documents in April of this year. And instead of asking to go to you to take a look at our design, we decided to go a different route. Per Marnie's recommendations, we started watching your public hearings on different projects, and we also started closely working with Marnie, and we changed our design significantly since our first approval. So whatever you see today is different from what we started with, and I would like Marnie to put it on the screen. And you have the hard copies of the same thing, which is going to be on the screen for public. So we start with a mid-century style, which actually my client, and they're here, Dr. David Brown and his wife Susan, they're here, and they wanted to share their time with me because it might take a little more than 5 minutes for me to present this project. We started with mid-century style, and then during the discussion with the staff, we realized it will not go fly, so we changed it to cottage, which has some modern elements, not rustic cottage, but modern cottage, which still we think fits very well the Carmel style and the size and balance of the structure on the lot. So what we did is we dropped the roof during our discussion. We dropped the roof by 3 feet from the original design. We changed the ceiling height from 9 to 8. We changed the roof material from metal standing seam to asphalt shingles. We provided mounting bars on the windows and doors. We also changed most of the walls to finish with tone and groove siding, horizontal siding. Garage door was changed from the more contemporary to more traditional. We were considering to remove this fence, which is on the private alley, but then decided that it's good for privacy of both my clients and neighbors. So what you see on that image, that's the difference between the originally submitted and what you're looking at right now. As a result of our design, there were no tree removal. We are preserving the forest character. Moreover, I believe we will plant 2 trees per recommendation of the city forester, upper canopy and low canopy trees. Per guidelines, the use of grand entry, oversized entry door, or large picture windows facing the street is discouraged. And that's, I want to point your attention to the part of this sentence, facing the street. This property is literally is unique because the structure is sitting inside of the property behind the historic wall, and on the 4th Street is behind a very tall iron gate, which you didn't see today because they were taken out temporary for protection for the duration of construction with a different permit. So that entry sits 40 feet away from the from the 4th Street. And as you can see on that rendering, you can hardly see it behind the fence and the gate. So we would like to, when I will talk about the conditions, to maybe reconsider this condition. Same thing applies to the garage. Garage sits far back from the property line. It's 34.5 feet. We provide adequate parking. One is covered, one is uncovered, and also you know that there is a street parking across with the at the Cherry Center and also along the historic wall at my client's property. All the ordinances like setbacks, heights, floor area, coverage, they are very well within the maximum allowed. And as Marnie pointed out, our maximum allowed was reduced by the just requirement for refer to the easement. So our base floor area was already reduced because of that, and we definitely are meeting those requirements. When I looked at the block and I studied all the properties around just for myself, right? I kind of took a Google shot and calculated square footage of the footprints of the property. Our project is, I would say, one of the best. We are better than 10 of 11 compared properties on the site. And the second story actually takes only 15% of the side of the property.
How much additional time do you think you're going to need?
Well, 5-6 minutes.
Okay, another 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. So there is another thing which 4th Street slopes down from Guadalupe to Santa Rita, and the drop is 14 feet. So, and our property is at the highest point of the block. So whoever is below us is definitely will be looking at the structure, whatever we do, right? Second story, single story, it always will be highest element on the property. As you see on the next pages, when we installed netting, it's not standing out as a massive addition, and we believe it's very human scale and balanced. And when you look at the front property, front side of the property, the new addition, second story addition, is basically completely hidden behind the gate when it will be back and behind the historic wall. Speaking of the privacy and looking at from the second floor to our neighbors across the alley, we have distances 70, 84, and 90 feet, which is, for information, it's like two regular lots in Carmel, right? A regular lot is 40 feet wide. We have like two lots between us, if I compare to the lot size. And one of the existing distances there is 58. Just for information, it's between the greenhouse you saw today and a house across of it. When Marnie mentioned the condition about the window at the staircase, this window will be right behind this tree. So if you will consider it as not a significant condition, we would like it to be removed. But if you will insist on it, then we will accept it. And a couple more pictures showing how much of the addition you will see from the alley. And the next page shows existing homes on the lot, which we think our design is a little better in terms of bulk and mass. And next page is that's what we just quickly did after we received letters from the neighbors concerning about the privacy, and we respect that. And we immediately, I immediately talked to the clients, and we decided to make changes to that terrace. So we reduced the terrace by 50%. We didn't exactly follow the condition which Marnie recommended, because that condition came later, right? But we moved the edge of the terrace almost 20 feet from the fence facing the alley, but we would like to stay within the walls below for symmetry and balance, as you can see on the next page. We changed the open railing with a solid 42 inches high railing, which will be finished with the same material as the house. And this is my presentation, but I also would like to use a couple minutes, I believe I have a couple minutes, to talk about the conditions. So as I said, we would like to maybe rephrase that condition. And if you accept our proposed reduced terrace, we would be glad if you will accept it as is. Condition number 3, which relates to that window on the staircase, which is completely hidden behind the tree, could be waived. But if you think it should stay, we will accept it. And we accepted conditions number 1, 2, 5, 11, and 12. But conditions 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 we would like to discuss. Condition 6 is about the top plate. There is no definition in the city code, and the top plate, I found the definition in the professional dictionary based on McGraw-Hill Dictionary of Scientific and Technical Terms, and it says the top horizontal member of the building frame to which the rafters are fastened. That's what exactly we did. And maybe there was a misunderstanding of our plans because we didn't have structural details. And those details are provided as following 3 pages. And I don't want to waste time on it, but we can talk about technicality if you wish. Condition number 7 is human scale from front entry. I already explained to you, right? It sits back 40 feet, and it won't be visible from the street. And I think it would be appropriate to accept our design because that entry is under the same flat roof, sloped roof, shallow roof. Instead of breaking roofs, which is not encouraged by the guidelines, we would like to stay below that roof. Next condition is number 8 about that chimney. And we thought the chimney is dictated by the city code to dominate above the house. This decorative wall, which is below the second floor, is not standing out as a mass and bulk, and it will be visible from the street only as a 30 inches side of that wall, but not the mass. And it actually works very well for bougainvillea, which is proposed in our landscaping plan. You can see the plan L1. And condition number 9, which is vaulted ceiling, right? We started with our original design to do volumetric calculations, and we were below maximum allowed. After we dropped the roof height by 3 feet, I'm sure we will be even better. So there is no restrictions for vaulted ceiling, and as you can see on the picture below, there are some nice examples in Carmel with vaulted ceiling, and it looks great. And especially when we are in a forest area, it would be very nice for my clients just to look out. They are not looking at their neighbors, but look out, because this is a transom window, and it's not involved with privacy whatsoever. Next page, please, Marnie. And this is just to show how much of the second floor is compared to the main floor. It's insignificant per our opinion, and it's not overwhelming because, as I said, the ceiling height is 8, roof height is 3 feet below maximum allowed, and whatever we saw from the window of the neighbors, and I respect their concerns, right? Because I would be also frustrated if something else will be in front of my house, but my clients have rights to build a second story, and whatever we build, it always will be visible from that window. And I just to remind you, we dropped the original height by 3 feet. It could be even higher. And the last condition is copper gutters, right? Insignificant, but if there is no restrictions, we would like to keep copper gutter. If there is restrictions, then we will accept it. Thank you. I'm here to answer your questions.
Okay, the questions for the architect.
And I didn't say my name, Anatoly Astritsov.
Anatoly, yes, Anatoly.
Not right now.
All right, thank you, Anatoly.
Thank you.
It's a very comprehensive presentation. Okay, are there members of the public like to address? Please come forward at this time.
My name is Susan Brown, and my husband and I own this property. And I would like to tell you that I'm thrilled to be here. In 1962, my husband's father was sent to the Defense Language Institute to study Vietnamese before he was sent to Vietnam to be there before anybody was. But what he did is he gave my husband a love for this area. He's been coming back since he graduated from West Point, and we've been coming here for 25 years. We've been here almost every summer for that long. We have rented 9 properties in Carmel, and nobody appreciates the community more than I think we do, because I love the cottage to the modern to all of the eclectic things. Didn't know anything about this neighborhood till about 4 or 5 years ago. one of my dear friends is here, and she's moved into that neighborhood, and we very much studied this area and knew that there was something very special, and we would like to be there. We did try about 2 months ago to go and knock on the door and knock on everybody's door and tell them who we were and give them information, and gave them our call. And we just found out that one of our neighbors that we knocked on the door, somebody else was there, and we gave the wrong card. So I'm very sorry that we missed them. But we tried to communicate with all of our neighbors and to let them know what this project was and let them know the information so they could call and ask us questions. We believe that we're good neighbors. We think we're good stewards and would like very much to be a part of this neighborhood and respect very much what you guys do. I don't know how you do it, because everybody's probably ready to go home and have food and a drink. But thank you very much for hearing us out, and I hope you will look at our project with appropriately. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, yeah, Mike, why don't you come forward and speak, and then I'll get you, David.
Thank you. Good evening, commissioners. My name's Mike Rachel. My wife and I have resided in Carmel-by-the-Sea since 2002, southwest corner of 4th Avenue and Perry Newberry Way. I'm here to support the applicants, Dr. and Mrs. Brown, as neighbors and as new friends. But I have some questions as a property inspector, as a homeowner, and as an outside contractor to the city for about 4.5 years as their building inspector. I filled in for Sergeant John Hansen while he was preparing and then in Afghanistan. So my questions are this. The applicants have moved forward with their construction, with their desired design. And my understanding is that the volumetrics had been approved and the plan check was approved. And I would guess that Jamal had probably been doing progress inspections throughout that period. Now we have the concept of oversized elements. Are there standards for oversized elements for a home on the highest elevation in that particular neighborhood behind 6-foot walls? I'm curious as to any of the answers, and if I'm misguided in any of these questions, please help me. I also have allergies, so I've lost some of my voice. Anyway, oversized elements. So to me, it would seem like it's an opinion, it's a personal preference. I look at the building on the southwest corner of Carpenter and 6th, and I wonder about oversized elements. Are you being consistent in your consideration of all things here for the applicants in terms of oversized elements in their design? The ceiling height volumetrics was Mr. Vasilovich who determined the volumetrics for this property. Was he aware of the oversized elements that were in the design? Those are questions I have for you. I'd leave with this. Unless there is some adverse impact in the design that would preclude the 6 of the 11 options that the applicants are asking to be waived on an everyday commonplace basis, who is suffering? Adverse impact to me is on a much more common, everyday, everybody sees it scale. So I ask you your consideration to allow the Browns to have their waivers as they have request.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Appreciate your comments. Okay, next speaker, want to come forward?
My name is Adrienne Huckle, and I live on the private drive at the other end. And good evening, everyone. And that particular block, the architect was saying about the house being built so far back from the actual road. Years ago in the 1940s, when they actually built that stone wall, there was a Mr. Smith who bought that block, and that was going to be his property for his entire estate. And into that wall for the entire block, he's built barbecues and seating arrangements, etc. And so that's why that particular property is set back so far from the street, whereas the other ones that came later were closer to the private drive. Pardon me. So my parents, well, I've lived in that area since basically 1987. That's when my parents bought the home, and now I've lived in it for 20 years. And I've always been proud of living there because it's such a unique and intriguing part of town. You know, I can tell people I live behind the historic stone wall and living close to the Coral Cherry Art Center. And then it's what makes Carmel and keeps the charm of the town intact are the buildings, the houses, and trees. It is always something most people mention when they describe our Carmel-by-the-Sea, everybody's. There is also the issue of tearing down some of these homes, rebuilding large, some might say uncharacteristic houses in their place. And actually, when I drove through and saw the ADU that was built, and that is my main problem with the entire project they're doing, I was just in disbelief. I could not believe that it had been approved and was actually built and looming over our neighborhood. I feel like it's overreaching its visual boundaries. And then when I saw the orange tape on the house itself, then I realized that was going to go up too. And to be honest with you, you know, I was really hurt and disappointed. You know, I just relish. I'm not big on change, let me put it that way. And I really could not believe that Carmel, with its so-called strict building code, would approve, number one, the ADU, and then now we have the orange netting up there. It didn't seem like, I mean, I didn't know anything about that ADU that was coming until it was there.
First of all, let me just interrupt. We don't have any control of the ADU. We're not reviewing that. So you're out of time. I would encourage you to summarize what you want to say, and then.
Thank you. Okay, it seems to me, though this is a developer's spec dream house, not of someone who would want to call this their home. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, David, go ahead. You have the floor.
Thank you. I'm speaking on behalf of the Carmel Preservation Association this evening, and we agree with staff's findings regarding the monumental oversized front door grand entrance, and do not believe that it is following design guidelines. We also agree with a public comment that says the mass, size, and scale of the project being out of context with other homes on the block. The design guidelines also say, add details to relieve blank surfaces. On the south, east, and north facades, they have very large blank surfaces. Design guidelines also say provide windows on walls facing the street. The north and east streets facing facades lack windows. They also say fenestration should not overwhelm the architecture. Most of the facades with windows are completely dominated by overwhelming fenestration. The design guidelines also say to integrate site design with materials established by other structures, and garden walls should complement the architecture. This is an important point for us because the beautiful historic wall and gate are sadly not reflected in the design of the home. The design guidelines allow new construction, including established character. Also, new construction should incorporate character of surrounding neighborhoods. We believe this design is not consistent with established Carmel character, the historic existing site elements, or surrounding neighborhood. We regretfully ask the architect to redesign the home, integrating the existing wall and gate and the established design guidelines. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, David. You want to come forward and speak?
Hi there. I've known Susan and David for years and years. They would be an incredible addition to the community. What I know, change is always difficult for anyone that's been living in a neighborhood that they've been looking at for years and years. This is, of course, a change. But going through this neighborhood and walking by the Carl Cherry Foundation, I think it would be nice to have that eyesore gone and changed into a more of a house that can be complemented with the Carl Cherry Foundation. And that's what this house does. The architect took into consideration that right across the street is the Carl Cherry Foundation. And with this design, it complements it. Does not take away from it. It's not an eyesore. It actually looks like part of the area. Again, change is hard for a lot of people that have been living in the same spot. They don't see their house being huge and tall, which some of the houses in that area actually are. So I would hope that the committee would approve this. It's a beautiful design. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else who would like to address? Please come forward.
Hi, I'm Mary Kenny, and my husband and I live just west of the property, directly across the the narrow drive. And I am here to ask that you actually not accept the concept design right now. So first of all, I want to thank you for the opportunity to comment, and I really want to shout out to the staff for your detailed review. It was something I could read and understand, so I really appreciate that. And the comments that I have for tonight are really for what that we saw. So I haven't had a chance to look at the changes that the architect has made, but and I sent a letter outlining my concerns about some of the elements of the design. But I think really for me and many of my neighbors right now, and I know, sometimes you don't like change, but I actually am looking forward to the renovation of this property. It does need it, and absolutely. And I've actually walked by another property that the Browns developed on Santa Lucia, very similar design. And it looks really good. It's one story. But I think this particular design, particularly, again, just what I know of it so far, it is the mass and the bulk of it that is overwhelming. And I think it does overwhelm the other homes in the neighborhood. And I think you can't, I know we're not talking about the ADU tonight, but you can't ignore it. We certainly can't, those of us that live across from it now. So it's 726 or 62 square feet. That's half the square footage of our house. That's across the way. So again, I just respectfully urge you, if possible, to maybe let us meet with the Browns. They did knock on doors, but we really haven't met and talked about this. And again, I do want to welcome them to the neighborhood. It's a great neighborhood, and they'd be lucky to live there. So anyway, yeah, so that's it. I just, again, for me, it's the mass and the bulk of the house. If that can be reduced, scaled back, I'm all for renovating this property. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else from the public that would like to address the Planning Commission? Please come forward.
Good evening. My name's Joe Pasqua. I'm Mary Kenny's husband. I also submitted comments that are attached to the report. I won't bother repeating. I just want to mention a couple of things that came up in the architect's discussion and some of the other comments. So Mary already mentioned this. We're completely cognizant of the fact that you aren't speaking about the ADU or ruling on the ADU, but it's a physical presence there. It does contribute to the overall sense of the property that you have when you look at it. So while we don't expect anything to be done relative to the ADU, we know that's already taken care of. We do hope that you will consider the impact of it along with the proposed construction as an overall effect, because it is an overall effect. It's 2 permits, but we see the whole thing as a unit. And the architect never brought that word up as in part of the discussion. I think it's very relevant. I can't really comment on the proposed change to the terrace. It wasn't really visible, so hopefully we'll get a chance to look at that. I am appreciative that they heard the comments and are willing to make some changes there to address that. I think also the staff report mentioned the plate height, in particular the vaulted ceiling. That is another thing. That area of the second story is another piece that does impact the perceived mass and bulk. And I did look through in the report and noticed the comparison of footprint. I don't dispute any of those numbers. I'm sure they're correct. But footprint is only one piece of the puzzle. There is also the overall mass and bulk. And that's the primary concern, as my wife mentioned, and that's also my primary concern. So we ask that you consider that in your deliberations. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to address the Planning Commission? Please come forward.
Mr. Chairman, Vice Chairman, as I understand it, fellow Commissioners, I'm David Brown. Susan's my wife. And I'm told that extemporaneously I'm usually too passionate, too wordy, so I wrote some notes, illegible though they may be, to try to get everybody home and to dinner and perhaps a glass of wine. So I'm going to even try to short circuit some of those words and just say, as Ken noted earlier, Carmel is a special place to my family. We've been coming here for a long time. Likewise, as we discovered from other ventures, the historic stone wall and the Godfather Gate are special as well. And just skipping through it, we're proud of the design. I think we came last month, and I think the Vice Chairman is the one who talked about the idea that this is a community of variety and the idea of diversity and the things that we like and try to build into wherever we are. And we're proud of what Anatoly's done, and he's also had the modifications. He's worked with Marnie very closely, and I think that if we look at it, we've met and compromised on almost all of 24 comments and modifications as necessary. And one of the aspects of that, noting Carmel, was that if you look at this double lot of 8,000 square feet, one of the concerns early on was the idea of, I think another comment that y'all sometimes talk about is horizontal versus vertical. And when you stand in Guadalupe and you look at this and the pictures of it, the entire intent of this is horizontal. I briefly just addressed the idea and aspect of privacy. We believe in that, respect that, both in here and in every community that we've lived in. There were hedges on the west fence that were unhealthy, and they came down with the demolition and removal of the swimming pool. We have full intent to replace those and replace them with what's appropriate and necessary in terms of shrubs and trees that may start as much as 10 feet and get to the point that hopefully with all this and the idea that the design modifications in this issue have been looked at and addressed, and I've walked around it, and we did try to meet the neighbors, and I apologize for meeting somebody staying in her house instead of her. But the idea is that we're trying to provide privacy and understand that, you know, even standing on the private road, I'm 4 times as close as the house is going to be to the front yard and front door, but we hope to use every bit of shrubbery and landscape to help improve that from where it is. And I think in aspect, we in those aspects, we've looked at this with a number of friends.
Can you summarize now? Because
this is the summary. We've looked at it with a number of friends, and much like was just noted, I think Anatoli's done a great job of the design. And again, Mr. Delves, I think you were the one who said we live in a community of 2-story houses in many places with 4,000 square foot lots. We're not trying to impose ourselves on anybody else, and we're trying to make it part of the community, especially with the Cherry Center there. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, I'm going to consider that the rebuttal from the applicant. So at this time, is there anyone else from the public? I don't see anybody here. I think everybody had a chance to speak. No hands coming up online, so I'm going to close the public hearing and open it up to my fellow commissioners for their comments. Commissioner Delves, you want to jump in there?
This is a hard one. And I know I'm not allowed to regulate ADUs, but I certainly have to observe them. And my first reaction when I pulled up there today was, what is that? That ADU and its design doesn't belong there. It just disrespects the wall. I think it disrespects the neighborhood. And I'm sorry to the Browns. I think you've introduced yourself to your neighbors by building an ADU that you didn't discuss with them, and we don't have any regulative authority, but that was your first move into the neighborhood. And you set a tone architecturally and design that I don't think is appropriate. And now, but you've done that. And so I show up on the site and see designs that it's like the tone is already set. And I don't think it's the right tone. I'm not saying it's I'll stick with the tone. I often ask architects to explain to me, because one of our fundamental design guidelines is, yes, variety, diversity, all those things, and this is diverse. But it's also compatibility with the built environment, compatibility with the existing homes in the neighborhood, compatibility with, in this case, with the wall, with the center across the street. It's compatibility with everything. And I asked the question, how were you inspired by your neighborhood in the design of this house? And I don't see the neighborhood in this design. In many ways, it feels like a design that was kind of brought here from somewhere else. And so I don't love it. I don't have problems, honestly, with the height. I accept the fact that you are far back. We deal all the time with privacy and height issues, and typically, we're dealing with one 4,000 square foot lot next to another one, next to another one, next to another one, where we really have to work hard to get a second story in a position where it's not offensive to the neighbor. In this case, the neighbor let us look out of his front door, and you're going to see a new house. It's going to be taller, but compared to what we see on other things, you're not eliminating a view. You're not eliminating. It's not a big solar issue, because it's really just as high as the trees behind it. I could go on. I don't have a ton of trouble with the height or the second story. But I think you are. I'm not prepared to approve this at concept. I think you need to go back and come back with something. I'm not going to do it for you, but I see a lot of windows. I see a lot of unarticulated wall. And you're calling it a cottage or a modern cottage. I don't see the cottage in this. I see a pretty modern design. So we'll see where my colleagues go, but I would be supportive of continuing this for a do-over.
Thank you, Commissioner Dose. Commissioner Locke, do you want to make comments?
Sure. Thanks for a start on that one.
Yeah, there you go.
I actually agree with pretty much everything that was just said, and want to add that I think that the stone wall chimney is too much, and I know there was a condition proposed to reduce that. To me, it looms, it's massive, and it's really out of place in that situation. I agree that the entry door has too much glass, and I think in general, there's a lot of glass. There's a lot of, especially from when you're looking from the east to the west, lots and lots of windows, lots and lots of, it's just kind of a glass wall. And it just seems out of character with that neighborhood. I think the use of natural materials is important. So I know that there was a proposal, thank you, to change the railing from the steel railing to the natural railing, and I hope that continues. And reducing the size of that upper deck also is, I think, will be appreciated. A thought I had regarding the proposed concrete below the fence line along the right-of-way would be maybe stone might work. I mean, that's a natural material. It obviously fits in with the stone neighborhood, so just throw that out there. The roof, to me, doesn't have enough pitch to it, and I find it very flat, especially just, like I said, that elevation when you're looking to the east, and it's just one big, long, very, doesn't have, like I said, it's just not got, I'd like to see more of the roof, not so much of the windows. And then I think other than that, that's really all I had to add to it. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Locke. Commissioner Carl-Petkov, your comments, please.
I think I really don't want to go into a lot of details of the project itself. I just wanted to say something about the role of historic buildings and how they impact everything around them. This particular lot is right across from Culture Center of Arts, and we all go there for cultural events, for classical music. Jeff Barron has his election campaign over there, so we do go to that particular place, and when we go out, the question is that the kind of house we want to see when we come out? Also, the old wall is, I'm still not clear exactly on the historical significance. We need to read about this, but I understand that it's something that defines that whole Block 45. So it kind of sets the tone of what's happening with this particular block. And looking at the wall, the way it goes up, and then the gate, it doesn't really correspond to the design presented today. I'm not sure exactly, I don't really want to go into the exact, conflicts there, but it just doesn't connect. It doesn't mesh well. We can go into the, the technicalities, how high is the plate? Are the windows 8 feet high, or the plate is 8 feet? I think the windows are itself, they're like 8 feet high, and the plate is a little bit more. And we can play with that, but I'm still struggling with the entire concept of the home in that neighborhood. I'm still trying to figure out how is that going to fit. And that's my major problem. And I'm not sure I'm ready to discuss technical kind of issues around that.
Okay, you're finished? Okay, thank you, Commissioner Carper. Yeah, it sounds like what I hear from Commissioner Dells, Commissioner Karapetkov, and Commissioner Locke is it's a context issue. And as Commissioner Karapetkov, excuse me I'm having trouble with the multiple syllables, but I'm getting there. The wall does set a real tone there, and this is a mid-century modern design. I mean, that's kind of what it is. And actually, I kind of like the house, the way it's designed. I think it kind of works together, but it clearly doesn't really work here. So that's kind of the challenge. I mean, Marnie, I had a question for you. When you're talking about eliminating that ceiling, is that in the context of lowering the second floor? I just didn't quite get my head wrapped around that.
The vaulted ceiling?
Yeah, the vaulted ceiling. Was that to lower the height of the roof, or was that what was the purpose of that?
Yes.
I'm sorry. It's a stupid question, but you got to explain it to me.
So basically eliminating the vaulted space and bringing that form into compliance
So you're
with
going
a single story.
by limiting, you want to bring the whole thing down. So you're going to bring the roof height down.
Correct.
Okay. All right. That would mitigate impacts to the neighbors. So, I mean, what we've got here is, part of the commission has a context problem with it. I understand that, but I think in that neighborhood, a lot of those houses don't really go with that wall. I mean, so it's like, what are you going to do? And like I said, I don't really have a problem with the design. I think it's well thought out and stuff. It's got impacts on the neighbors. In the context, you could argue that. So, I mean, I think staff has done a good job of identifying issues and coming up with special conditions, draft conditions. But I might be the only one here, so. I mean, if it was up to me, I'm just going to do this to get it going. Anybody wants to make a substitute motion, go right ahead. But I'm going to make a motion that we just accept it as presented by staff with staff's special conditions, also acknowledging that the designer has made changes to the special condition as it relates to the what's called the yoga terrace, right? So what condition was that?
It's not.
What condition was that? I got to get that condition up here.
It was special 11, but we didn't talk about the reduced size.
So that was condition 11, draft condition 11?
It was the railing.
Oh, it's the railing. Okay, but there was no condition to. Okay, but the
Draft condition number
draft, yes,
4
yeah.
was
Prior to the applicant shall reduce the size. Okay, so that's all been addressed in the architect addressed that. So I'm going to make a motion to accept the draft condition as per staff.
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a motion made and second to accept the resolution as per staff. Is there any more discussion?
A little bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I mean, I get it. Staff Marnie has added, she's addressing a lot of issues, a lot of concerns that I share. So by agreeing to this, it really is saying incorporate all these things, but remember this is concept, right? So you still have to clear another hurdle. And I didn't hear from the architect a lot of agreement with these conditions already. I mean, you're fighting the conditions already. And I think the message being sent is, no, these are all conditions, and if you want to move forward, you have to, at a minimum, come in with these. So I just want to make sure I'm understanding where this would go.
Yeah. I think staff looked at this project, reviewed this project, and saw the areas where it didn't meet the design guidelines, acknowledged the impacts of privacy, and came up with draft conditions which address those. And so and the architect obviously made a very nice presentation. I appreciate it. It was a good presentation, really well documented. And I gave him extra time because I thought it was substantial and well documented. That's why I gave you extra time, and I wanted to hear it. But this is a project where it doesn't, we're not going to come up with consensus on this. Staff, this is concept. This is where we look at a project and we try to work through it to come up with a better project. So, we have a resolution here. We've got a motion. It's been seconded. We don't have a substitute motion. So is there any further discussion? No further discussion? Okay. Roll call.
Commissioner Delbs?
No.
Commissioner Karapetkov?
No.
Commissioner Locke?
Yes.
Chair LePage?
Yes. So the motion fails because we're in a tie.
In the event of a tie, a
Yeah,
motion fails. That's
the
correct.
motion fails.
So you'd be looking for someone to make an alternate motion.
Yeah,
at this
so we
point.
need an alternate motion. I'll make an alternate motion that we continue the project with direction that has been given by staff in their draft conditions, and also with the direction from the other members of the Planning Commission.
Second.
Okay, any more discussion on that? Continue. Okay, we have roll call, please.
Commissioner Delbs?
Yes.
Commissioner Karapetkov?
Yes.
Commissioner Locke?
Yes.
And Chair LePage?
Yes. Okay, the motion is carried to continue the project for redesign with the direction as given by staff and the Planning Commission. Thank you. Okay, I believe that completes the public hearing tonight, and the next item on our agenda is the report from our director.
Thank you, Mr.
On to
Chair.
report.
Short report for you tonight. I just want to remind you all, you know this, but for the public as well, we do have a special meeting of the Planning Commission on August 23rd to review the wireless ordinance draft, the second draft. These are, updates based on the workshop that we had back in March. That's available right now. It's on the city's website. It has not only the red line draft showing the changes, but the clean versions, and also a matrix that goes through all of the comments we received and how those were responded to. So we encourage everyone to take a look at those. You all have copies of those. We'll be excited to hear from the community. Once again, we will be asking you for a formal recommendation to the City Council at that meeting. It is not a workshop, it is a formal hearing. So that's coming up August 23rd. Big kudos to our housing team, Marnie and Catherine, our consultants, and everybody that's been involved with that. Our Housing Element Ad Hoc Committee comprised of Vice Mayor Bobby Richards and Council Member Karen Ferlito. We launched our draft housing element last week to the state, which I can't overstate how big of a feat that is to be done in less than a year. That hit me the other day that we did that in less than a year. Many cities have been working on it for over a year and have not hit send on that button yet. So it's a big kudos, and I think the product we sent is really good.
Great job, you guys.
Yeah, so they deserve a ton of credit on it. It was an amazing team effort. The last bit of news I have is actually a bit of sad news, unfortunately. This will be Suray's last planning commission. He's leaving us. That's the challenge when you have excellent employees like Suray, is that they get picked off, and Suray has an opportunity to continue to grow his planning professional career, which is pretty much started here at the city of Carmel-by-the-Sea. We've been lucky enough to watch him grow here over the last 2 years. And he's got an opportunity to go work with the city of Los Gatos and grow his professional planning career, and they're very lucky to have him. So we wish him the best, although it is sad to see him go, because not only is he a good planner, he's also a heck of a nice human being. So we're going to miss having him around. So that's my update. I wish I didn't have to give that last one, but it's the truth. So that's what I got for you.
Yeah, well, we should be happy for him. Sounds like he's moving on to
We're very happy.
good position, Oh, he's still there.
He's still here. That's
Great. Yeah, great. Thought you left. Well, congratulations. Sounds like you got a great job, and that's a nice area to live in. I grew up in Mountain View, so I know that area. Anyway, you too?
He's moving from a dog city to a cat city.
Okay. All right. I guess that concludes our meeting, but I will see you all on the 23rd. So,
That was excellent.
good night.
Thank you.